Chapter 26:15. The hall was brightly lit, but the atmosphere was somewhat depressing. It's just dealing with Lin Sun. Seniors, there's no need to worry too much. When the battlefield of the gods appears, it will be the time of his death. A young man leaned lazily on a chair in a frivolous manner. His gray hair fluttered in the wind, and a wisp of a frivolous arc hung on the corners of his mouth. Nan Tianjing, an extremely famous peerless figure in the seventh heavens Ju-Ing Emperor realm. Before Lin Sun arrived at Chaotian City, he had sent out a message to the outside world. If Lin Sun dared to appear in the gods' ruins, he would be killed. Nephew, this kid is ranked in the top 100 of the Xian ranking. How can he be so easy to deal with? Don't forget, who knows how many Dao ancestors have died in his hands. A gentle and refined man chuckled. His name was Yun Lanfeng, and he came from the immortal emperor clan's Yun clan. According to seniority, he was Yun Muja's uncle. If I use my trump card, I can also do it. Nan Tianjing smiled, and his eyes were as cold as a blade. Let's do it this way. When the battlefield of the gods appears, our 4 clans will each send out a force. No matter what, we must kill this kid. We must not let others obtain his fortuitous encounters. Nan Yongqiang made a decision. Gu Banzwang, Yun Lanfeng, and the others nodded. He refused? At the same time, in another grand and elegant courtyard in the city, a white-haired old man couldn't help but be surprised. Yes, I originally thought that Lin Sun came from the ancient path of stars and didn't understand the power of our Fu clan in the eternal true world. But later I discovered that he was well aware of it, but he still refused. The Fu family brocade-robed man who had appeared before the realm battle steel and extended an invitation to Lin Sun frowned and said, I suspect that he is waiting for a good offer to see if there are other undying bigwigs who will recruit him. The white-haired old man smiled and said, waiting for a good price? A person who can leave his name in the top 100 of the Xian ranking isn't a commodity. He can't be measured by value. The young man in embroidered robes spoke. Elder, there's a rumor circulating in the city that the 4 clans of the Eastern Royal Clan all have killing intent in their hearts, wanting to kill this young man on the battlefield of deities. From my point of view, this young man has many troubles on him. If we forcefully recruit him, we might even offend the Eastern Royal Clan. The white-haired old man frowned, the smile on his face vanished. Do you think that our Fu clan can't even afford to offend the 4 dogs of the Donghuang clan? The man immediately broke into a cold sweat and said, I dare not. I just think it's not worthwhile to pay such a price for Lin Sun. The white-haired old man thought for a moment and said, Never mind, you don't have to interfere in this matter. If this kid has the ability to return alive from the battlefield of the gods, then I'll go see him personally. The next morning, Lin Sun woke up from meditation, feeling refreshed. All these years of battle and slaughter had caused him to not be able to relax like this for a very long time. Lin Sun, what's your ranking? If you tell me, I might be able to help you resolve some of your troubles, Green Sparrow suddenly said. It had held back the question for the whole night, but now it really couldn't hold it in any longer. Lin Sun was startled and said with a strange look in his eyes, Is the ranking so important? Green Sparrow said angrily, Even the Fu clan has taken the initiative to recruit you. Do you think it's an ordinary thing to be able to leave your name in the top 100 of the Xian ranking? Don't talk nonsense, tell me quickly. My Yuan clan has also set up a stronghold in Chaotian City, maybe it can help you. Obviously, Green Sparrow intended to use the power of the Yuan clan to help Lin Sun resolve his troubles. Green Sparrow, if you really want to help me, don't disturb the Yuan clan, Lin Sun said seriously. Lin Sun said seriously, especially some of my secrets. You know them, but I don't want others to know them except you. All these years, with the guidance of Green Sparrow, he saved a lot of time and energy, and also helped him avoid many dangerous places. In his heart, Green Sparrow had long regarded Green Sparrow as a friend. Green Sparrow was obviously very surprised. After a moment of silence, she said, "I just want to help you. If you don't want to, then forget it." Lin Sun smiled and said, "It's enough that you have this intention." As he said, he told Green Sparrow his ranking. All of a sudden, Green Sparrow was dumbfounded as if struck by lightning. She stood there with a look of disbelief and inexplicable shock. After a long time, she flapped her wings and shouted, "Freak, how could I meet such a big freak like you? God, if this ranking is known by the Eternal God Clan, I'm afraid they won't be able to sit still." Green Sparrow seemed to lose her composure, which made Lin Sun speechless for a while. It was just a ranking. Could it really be so magical? If he told Green Sparrow that this ranking was the result of the test without taking talent power into account, what expression would it have? Lin Sun shook his head with a smile and walked straight out of the inn. "I'm going to walk around in the city. Do you want to go with me?" Green Sparrow murmured in a daze, "Go ahead. I need to calm down, or my heart won't be able to bear it." Lin Sun was stunned. He touched his nose and lifted his feet to leave alone. Should I ask for help from the clan or not? Watching Lin Sun leave, Green Sparrow was suddenly at a loss, her eyes flickering. Lin Sun's high ranking on the Xian list made her scalp numb. She couldn't even believe it. She was very clear that if the Yuan family recruited Lin Sun into the clan, it would be no different from picking up a peerless treasure. If he embarked on the immortal path in the future with his assistance and service, it would be enough to greatly improve the status and prestige of the Yuan family. This was not an exaggeration. Ranking in the top 100 of the Xian list attracted the recruitment of the 8th Heaven's immortal Fu family. What if he was ranked in the top 10? That would have a completely different meaning. Not to mention the Fu family, even the immortal giants of the 8th Heaven would be alarmed and fight for him. Even the rumored Eternal God clan that had been entrenched in the 9th Heaven would be tempted if they knew about this. And Lin Sun was ranked 9th. At the thought of this ranking, Green Sparrow couldn't remain calm. If this news were to spread, the entire Chaotian city would probably be in an uproar. It would be great if Miss was here. After a long time, Green Sparrow couldn't help but lament. It felt like she had found a peerless treasure, but she couldn't decide whether to occupy it or not. While Green Sparrow was in a dilemma, Lin Sun was leisurely walking around the city, extremely relaxed. Chaotian City was bustling and prosperous. Creatures from the eternal world could be seen everywhere. There were all kinds of strange races, and no matter how high or low their cultivation was, they lived in harmony. With the deterrence of Hao Tian, the spirit of order, even the Emperor Ancestor didn't dare to use force. This made the atmosphere in the city quite peaceful, like a scene of peace and prosperity. This made Lin Sun couldn't help but feel a lot of emotions. Creatures in the world, no matter how high or low their cultivation was, followed a certain rule and order. How could there be so much turmoil and bloodshed? Just like in this Chaotian city, with the existence of Hao Tian, who dared to make trouble without permission. Gradually, many thoughts came to Lin Sun's mind. He had a lot of order power, but his understanding of this power was almost zero. But now that he saw the existence of Hao Tian, he realized that the existence of order power was not as simple as a fighting method that could be used. It also involved the essential mystery of maintaining the operation of a world. Suddenly, a burst of angry curses came from a restaurant in the distance. "Get lost. Stupid beggar, if this wasn't Chaotian City, I would have cut you up 1,000 times." A waiter scolded angrily. Next to him, a figure with unkempt hair and a dirty face was lying on the ground. He shouted, "Wine, wine, give me wine and I'll leave." Many people gathered around to watch the show. Rumor has it that this person was originally an existence with a high level of cultivation. However, no one knows what kind of calamity he went through, but as a result there was a huge problem with his mental state. His cultivation faded, and he became a complete cripple. He became crazy. Ah, the path of the great Tao is full of dangers. Looking at him like this, I can't help but feel sad. Don't pity him. This guy might be crazy, but he has a lot of requirements. Ordinary wine won't catch his eye. He must drink Baofeng Restaurant's precious divine brew, Winding Stream Goblet. Do you know how much a cup of Winding Stream Goblet costs? A total of 3,000 first-class eternal void source crystals. A pot of it costs at least 100,000 first-class eternal void source crystals. Oh my, this beggar's appetite is not small. The people discussed and pointed at the unkempt beggar. Some of them felt pity for him, while others ridiculed him. If you don't leave, I'll drive you away. In front of the restaurant, the waiter looked terrible. He had a headache. He couldn't fight in Chaotian City, so he couldn't do anything to this crazy beggar. I'll only drink 1 cup, just 1 cup, the beggar pleaded. 1 cup? That's still 3,000 first-class eternal void source crystals. Do you have money? The waiter said angrily. He was furious. This crazy beggar would appear in front of the restaurant every once in a while. Over the years, he had become a scene in the city, giving people a headache. Come with me, I'll give you wine. Suddenly, a tall figure walked over, squatted down, and spoke in a warm voice. There was a hint of unconcealable complexity in his eyes. Lin Sun? Exclamations rang out nearby, causing a commotion. All eyes couldn't help but look at the tall figure squatting in front of the beggar, full of curiosity and surprise. The incident that happened yesterday was still fermenting in the city. Who could not recognize that this tall figure was the peerless, ruthless man who had left his name in the top 100 of the Xian ranking? The waiter who had intended to drive the beggar away immediately shut his mouth, feeling bewildered. The scene fell silent for a while. On the ground, the unkempt beggar shouted, "I only drink Winding Water Scoop." Lin Sun nodded, "Okay. I want to drink 1 pot, no, 10 pots." The beggar continued, as if he had caught a sucker and wanted to extort a fortune. Even the people nearby could not stand it anymore. Wasn't his table manners too unsightly? He probably didn't know that the person in front of him was a peerless, ruthless man who was famous in the vast 1,000 battlefields. Even the waiter couldn't help but say angrily, "Old thing, you don't know what's good for you, you." Before he could finish, he was interrupted by Lin Sun with a wave of his hand. However, Lin Sun lowered his head and looked at the crazy beggar seriously, saying, "As long as you come with me, I'll let you drink 100 pots or 1,000 pots, let alone 10. Chapter 26:16. With that, Lin Sun held the beggar's arm and helped him up. He looked at the waiter. "Prepare a private room and serve your best dishes." "Master Lin, are you really going to invite this guy for a drink?" In the past, someone pitied him and invited him for a drink, but when the waiter met Lin Sun's abyss-like eyes, he couldn't help shivering all over. He didn't dare to say anything more and hurried into the restaurant. "What do you mean by the best dishes? I only drink Winding Water Scoop," the beggar muttered. "Well, let's drink Winding Water Scoop." Lin Sun sighed in his heart. He took the beggar's arm and walked into the restaurant. Is that man a relative of Lin Sun? Seeing this, the onlookers couldn't help but wonder. The beggar had been in Chaotian City for many years and was suspected by many people to have a strong background. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to reach Chaotian City alive. But after many tests over the years, people found that the beggar was really crazy. He had lost his Taoist heart and cultivation. He was no different from a loser. No matter how great his background was in the past, he was still a crazy beggar now. Under such circumstances, Lin Sun invited him for a drink, which was naturally surprising and puzzling. Soon, people dispersed, and the news that Lin Sun invited the crazy beggar for a drink quickly became a joke in the city. At the same time, in a private room on the 3rd floor of Baofeng Restaurant, all kinds of delicacies were spread out on a large table. Beautiful waiters served pots of Winding Water Scoop one after another. The beggar with untidy clothes and unkempt hair squatted in a chair, holding a pot of wine and gulping it down. Lin Sun sat opposite him with a complicated expression. In his eyes, although the beggar was dirty, it still couldn't cover his youthful appearance. Lin Sun couldn't help but think of the scene he saw in Nirvana Ishvara. Boom! In the depths of the starry sky, a void abyss collapsed as if it had been sunk. The violent power of law roared and emitted unparalleled power. Then, a figure walked out of the void abyss, thin, straight and tall, crack. Crack. As this figure appeared, the starry sky trembled as if it was on the verge of shattering. The power of the great path collapsed and fell into chaos. At this moment, it was like a god from another dimension had descended here, and merely the aura he emanated was something that even the starry sky was unable to endure. That figure walked over. With every step he took, the nearby void collapsed, and a portion of the great path laws crumbled. His figure was thin, ramrod straight, and covered in extremely dazzling and gorgeous divine radiance. It transformed into circle after circle of light that illuminated the scene in the world. However, upon closer inspection, he had the appearance of a young man. He had delicate features and wore black clothes. His long hair casually draped over his shoulders, and a wine gourd was tied to his waist by a red string. However, when his eyes moved about, they were suffused with the aura of the passage of time. This scene had shocked Lin Sun greatly in those years. It was like a brand that left a deep impression on him. Later, Lin Sun knew his name was Kong Ju. It was Kong Ju, who walked on the great Tao with a desolate swallowing gourd at his waist. He had gone through 18 tribulations in his life, and had achieved immortality after his death. It was the Kongju of unprecedented and unparalleled, the only one. He was the first person to head to the other side of the starry sky at the beginning of the primeval times, and he was regarded as a leader by his peers at that time. His talent was extraordinary and unparalleled. Moreover, he was the best friend of the Master of the Heart Core, and he was addressed as Martial Uncle by the descendants of the Heart Core. However, was this fellow before him who was mad like a beggar and had been reduced to living on the streets, still the legend that traversed the starry sky and was capable of confronting his master, the Master of the Heart Core? A wave of indescribable sorrow suddenly surged into Lin Sun's heart. Back then, Martial Uncle Kong Ju, just how unparalleled was he? Just how unparalleled was he? But why had he become like this now? Delicious. Ha! Delicious. I haven't drunk such fine wine for a very long time. Even if I'm scolded to death, it's worth it to be able to drink it to my heart's content today. Ha ha! As he drank, Kong Ju, who was mad like a beggar, roared with laughter, and his expression was filled with delight like a child that had obtained candy. Lin Sun's eyes flickered. How could he not see that Kong Ju's Taoist heart was empty and without intelligence? At this moment, he was indeed no different from a delirious lunatic. What on earth have you experienced these years? Lin Sun couldn't help asking. But Kong Ju, who was sitting opposite him, ignored him. He held the flagon and drank to his heart's content. He didn't touch the delicacies on the table at all. It seemed that wine had become a part of his life. Lin Sun was silent. He remembered what his master, the Master of the Heart Core, had said. Kong Ju is just like his name. He seeks an unprecedented path towards the Tao. However, he's too prejudiced. After he overcame the tribulation of eternity, he thought that he'd already transcended the grand Tao and could truly enjoy great eternity and freedom. It's also because of his paranoia that his state of mind encounters unpredictable tribulations. If these tribulations are not broken, his state of mind will continue to fall. Although he has achieved nothing, his temperament, experience, and memory will continue to fall back to the beginning. It's like a wise old man whose state of mind and experience return to his youth overnight. However, his cultivation won't disappear, and that's undoubtedly the most dangerous thing. You can imagine, how dangerous would it be for a child who doesn't have enough experience and whose temperament is like a blank piece of paper to possess strength even greater than the imperial ancestor. At that time, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel shocked when he learned this. This was indeed unimaginable. A heart tribulation actually caused a supreme figure's mental state, experience, and wisdom to fall to the very beginning. Then, how could he control the cultivation he originally possessed? If he did evil, all the heavens would suffer. The most terrible thing was that the fading of his memory and wisdom would make him unrecognizable. But now, Lin Sun found that not only martial Uncle Kong Ju's state of mind, memory, and wisdom all declined. Even his cultivation was completely lost. At least in Lin Sun's perception, Kong Ju's cultivation was gone, and he was no different from a real ordinary person. No. It should be said that he was stronger than ordinary people. At least, he could drink pots of divine wine containing surging spiritual energy. Ordinary people couldn't bear this kind of wine at all. Kong Ju had drunk 7 wine pot. When he was about to drink the 8th pot, Lin Sun held his palm. Do you want to continue drinking? Lin Sun stared at Kong Ju's eyes. Yes. Kong Ju nodded fiercely, his eyes full of desire. As long as you answer a few questions, I will let you drink enough, said Lin Sun. Kong Ju said angrily, over the years, many people have asked me questions, but they are not happy when I answer them. They don't even give me a glass of wine. Lin Sun was stunned and said, Don't worry. As long as you answer, I promise to let you drink to your heart's content. Kong Ju said impatiently, asked quickly, Don't talk nonsense. Do you remember who you are? Lin Sun asked. Kong Ju laughed. How can I not know who I am? I am Wine Fairy. Lin Sun frowned and said, Wine Fairy, how did you appear in Chaotian City? Kong Ju scratched his disheveled hair and said, I forgot. I should have come when I was drunk. Well, forget it. As long as there is wine to drink. Lin Sun asked, Do you remember this person? As he spoke, he pressed his fingers together and drew a line, causing a screen of light to appear. A thin and ramrod straight figure with delicate features appeared on the screen of light. The figure wore black clothes, had long hair that hung loosely on his shoulders, and a wine gourd that was tied by a red string hung at his waist. At the same time, Lin Sun said softly, With the devouring gourd on my waist, I walked on the road. I went through 18 tribulations before my death and proved it after my death. Before finishing his words, Kong Ju pointed to the wine gourd on the waist of the figure in the light curtain and said with saliva dripping down his mouth, It must be the best wine in the world. As he said, he raised his hand to grab it. Lin Sun frowned more and more. After asking a few more questions, he found that he couldn't get any answers at all. He sighed in his heart. With a resolute look flashing in his eyes, he suddenly released a wisp of spiritual awareness into Kong Ju's body. After a while, Lin Sun withdrew his spiritual awareness disappointedly. Kong Ju's body was empty without a trace of spiritual qi. There was no mystery at all. Drink, I want to drink, Kong Ju shouted. At this time, he was really like a child, and all his behaviors were natural. Lin Sun said, Come with me. I will let you drink not only the winding river but also all kinds of top wine in the world. No, I have to wait for someone. Kong Ju shook his head and refused. Wait for someone? Lin Sun was excited and asked, Who? Kong Ju scratched his head and said with a blank look, I don't know, but I will keep waiting. If you wait for that person, what are you going to do? Lin Sun asked. Go home. Kong Ju grinned, with longing in his eyes, like a child longing to return to his mother's arms. Lin Sun was silent for a long time before he said, Uncle, my master once said that if he could see you one day, he would take you back to the starry sky ancient path. Because you are the pathfinder of the starry sky ancient path, and my successor, Fong Ciyuan. Kong Ju was stunned, and his expression changed. Lin Sun couldn't help looking forward to this abnormal scene. To his disappointment, Kong Ju shouted the next moment, "What, master? Pathfinder? Are they more important than wine? Are you the same as the others, trying to trick me into not letting me drink?" Lin Sun sighed and gave up the test completely. He waved his sleeve and put away all the wine on the table, which made Kong Ju anxious. He rushed forward and hugged Lin Sun's leg, saying, "Wine, my wine. I want to drink." Lin Sun took out the Tower of Endless quietly and said, "If you want to drink, go into this tower by yourself." Kong Ju raised his head and said happily, "You won't lie to me?" Lin Sun nodded. "Let me in, quick," Kong Ju said eagerly. Lin Sun opened the Tower of Endless and sprinkled a piece of light. At this moment, an invisible power of order quietly appeared in this room. P.S. Well, I will add one more chapter tonight. Uncle Fong Siyuan of Fong Siyuan Mountain is here. Chapter 26:17. The power of order appeared silently. When Lin Sun sensed it, his body suddenly tightened. An indescribably lethal threat was like a blade that was pressed against his throat, and it seemed as if a light swing of the blade would be able to annihilate him. It was the deterrence of death. Even if he was at the peak of the 8th level of the Emperor realm, in front of such power, he was as weak as grass. Lin Sun immediately thought of Haotian, the power of order that covered Chaotian City. It was an order that was at least at the 9th level of heaven rank, because only this level of order could give birth to a spiritual body like Haotian. But only for a moment. Lin Sun's deadly threat was resolved. The Nirvana order appeared, like a blooming lotus pattern, emitting a strange light of order, silently crushing the power of Haotian. Inconceivably, the shattered rain of light was completely absorbed by the rebirth order, and it gave others the feeling as if it was collecting spoils of war. Whoosh! The Haotian order disappeared in an instant, as if it was electrocuted, or it sensed something was wrong. Seeing this, the Nirvana order returned to the abyssal sword cauldron. Everything happened in the blink of an eye, but Lin Sun's back was soaked with cold sweat. After a while, he let out a long sigh of relief, feeling like he had survived a disaster. No wonder no one could take Uncle Kong Ju away all these years. With the cover of the Haotian order, even those who had evil intentions towards Uncle Kong Ju could do nothing. Lin Sun vaguely understood that it was because of his action of summoning the Tower of Endless that the Haotian order appeared. The Nirvana order can deter and collect the spirits of order, and it can also dissolve the Haotian order. It seems that the level of the Nirvana order is probably above the God rank. Lin Sun's heart was in turmoil. A long time ago, he felt that the Nirvana order was unusual. It could not only reshape the order of the netherworld and the immortal path, but also suppress the spirits of order and reshape the power of order. All of this seemed incredible. Now, even the Haotian order, which was most likely the work of the eternal gods, could be dissolved by the Nirvana order. This made Lin Sun unable to regard the Nirvana order as the heaven rank order. It was too miraculous. If it was classified by level, at least, it should be above the God rank. Of course, this was just Lin's speculation. He had yet to come into contact with the path of immortality, so it was impossible for him to truly understand and comprehend the mysteries of order power. He could only make comparisons and speculations. Haha, here I come. At this moment, Kong Ju seemed to have completely not noticed anything unusual, and he walked into the Tower of Endless while roaring with laughter before vanishing in the blink of an eye. With a strange look in his eyes, Lin Sun immediately sent his spiritual awareness into the Tower of Endless. Suddenly, a strange cry rang out, "Hey, hey, hey, who did I see? This. Isn't this Martial Uncle Kong Ju? How did he end up like this? He couldn't have been suppressed by little junior brother like me, right?" In the Tower of Endless, Ling Xuanzi's face was filled with shock as he stared at Kong Ju and sized him up as if he had seen a ghost. Kong Ju's face was full of confusion as he shouted, "Where's the wine? Where's the wine?" Ling Xuanzi had a strange look in his eyes as he said, Uncle Master Kong Ju, when you were a guest at Fangsuan Mountain, I was only 12 years old, right? But the first time you saw me, you said that I, Ling Xuanzi, was rebellious and unstable. If I did evil, I would definitely be a first-class disaster in the world. Do you still remember? Kong Ju lay on the ground and wailed, Wine, I only want wine. Ling Xuanzi sneered and said, I've seen people pretending to be confused, pitiful and innocent, but I've never seen someone pretending to be crazy. As he spoke, he grabbed towards Kong Ju. Fourth senior brother. Lin Sun stopped him as he couldn't stand it anymore. Uncle Master Kong Ju has already become like this. How can you still do this? Ling Xuanzi was stunned and then he sighed, Little junior brother, can't you see that I'm testing you? Or do you really think that a person like him would end up like this? He's obviously pretending to be crazy. Lin Sun frowned and said what his master, the master of endless space, said one by one. Ling Xuanzi's expression flickered and he said, Is there really something wrong with his state of mind? Why don't I believe it at all? But don't worry, he's our uncle master after all. I won't show any disrespect or neglect. Lin Sun thought about it and didn't say anything else. He stood up and left the private room. He spent a huge sum of money to buy over 100 pots of winding stream gulp in Baofeng restaurant. He bought all of them and stuffed them into the Tower of Endless. Lin Sun turned around and returned to the inn, no longer in the mood to stroll around. According to the news, in 3 to 5 months to a year, the God's Relic, which was known as the first forbidden area in the vast 1,000 battle domains, would open a path to survival. At that time, the God's battlefield would also appear. Lin Sun planned to raise his strength to the peak of the 8th stage martial emperor realm before that. A month passed quickly. Outside Chaotian City, far away from the 100,000 star path, a skinny, sage-like old Taoist quietly appeared in the starry void. His eyes were cloudy and full of vicissitudes of life. God's battlefield. Supreme treasure. Could it be the treasure left behind in the central 9 heavens immortal palace during the destruction of the last era? The old Taoist's eyes flickered. No matter what, I must get the good fortune jade plate back. Boundless hatred surged in his heart. He thought of the good fortune jade plate that Lin Sun took away and the endless humiliation he had suffered in the past. For a moment, his face turned ashen and gloomy. In the end, the old Taoist didn't enter the city. His figure flickered and he came to the depths of the universe, lying dormant on an ancient star. Far away from this ancient star, there was a dazzling galaxy. It was like a pair of butterfly wings in the universe, with billions of stars revolving within it. It was mysterious and vast. Looking closely, there were countless space-time turbulences surging around the galaxy, flickering with a terrifying aura of destruction. That was the God's Relic. Since ancient times, it was known as the first forbidden area in the vast 1,000 battle domains. Anyone who entered would die. Time passed. The atmosphere in Chaotian City was getting more and more oppressive because some immortal figures appeared in the city. This made people realize that even the immortal figures were tempted by the opening of the God's Relic, and they planned to come and fight for it. At the same time, discussions arose everywhere in Chaotian City, and they were all rumors related to the God's Relic. Some said that the God's Relic was the supreme immortal palace of the last era, and it hid the eternal secrets of the last era. Some said that the God's Relic was filled with great danger, and it was very likely that there were terrifying figures from the last era still alive. Some also said that the God's Relic contained the greatest fortune of the last era, and whoever obtained it would be able to stand proudly at the peak of the ages and achieve ultimate transcendence. All kinds of rumors spread in Chaotian City, attracting the attention of countless cultivators. Lin Sun didn't care about any of this. He was in seclusion. Until 3 months later. Boom! A violent tremor came from the depths of the universe outside Chaotian City, causing a commotion in the entire city. Countless cultivators looked up and looked beyond the universe. There was a huge crack that pierced through the universe, tearing the sky apart, and it made people tremble. Many people saw that the crack came from the depths of the universe, from the god's relic that was like the wings of a butterfly. It was very faint, but it was too long. It appeared from the god's relic, and it stretched across the vast universe for who knew how many tens of thousands of miles. Could it be that the god's relic is about to split open, and the god's battlefield is about to appear? Chaotian City was in an uproar, and everyone's heart was pounding. Some people were already trembling from excitement, and they couldn't help but roar towards the sky. Since ancient times, this was regarded as the #1 forbidden area in the vast thousand battle domains. It was a land of death, and no matter who approached it, they would die without a doubt. Even the undying figures didn't dare to take a step forward. But now a faint crack had opened up, extending from the god's relic and spanning the vast universe. This opportunity was about to come. Woo-woo, a horn sounded in Chaotian City, vast and deep, resonating with the heavens and earth. It was as if it had been blown from the ancient times, and it had spread all the way to the present. This was the power of the Hautian order in Chaotian City, and it had reacted today. This meant that an unprecedented change was about to occur. Even the Hautian order has been alarmed. This must be a sign that the god's relic is about to open. An undying figure sighed. Not long after, in the depths of the universe, the god's relic that was like the wings of a butterfly seemed to have awakened from its eternal slumber. It emitted dazzling divine rainbows of the great Tao, and they shot out in all directions, illuminating the entire universe. It was incomparably resplendent, and it dazzled everyone's eyes. Everyone stared there in a daze. This was the evolution of the Tao. Every divine rainbow was a mysterious and unfathomable power of order, and it was suffused with the aura of the immortal Tao from the last era. It was brilliant and boundless. At this moment, not to mention the Emperor realm figures, even the undying existences that had recently entered Chaotian City, the giants that had lived for who knew how many tens of thousands of years, were moved. They squinted their eyes and stared carefully. The change that had occurred in the god's relic was too great. Millions of divine rainbows shot through the void of the universe, and they carried the immortal Tao from the last era, and they were reflected in the heavens. Let's go. The first to move were the undying existences. They charged out of the city at the first possible moment and soared into the sky. Closely after, the cultivators in the city moved out like a flood. For a time, streaks of light were like rain as they charged into the depths of the universe. It was a rather magnificent sight. The entire city was seething with excitement. This had never happened in the past. Lin Sun walked out of the inn and saw this scene. Especially when he saw the shocking changes that had occurred in the depths of the universe, he was slightly shaken. Countless dazzling divine rainbows, slender and translucent, covered the starry sky. Not only was it visually beautiful, but it also reflected the wonders of the immortal Tao. All sorts of colorful lights danced about, and divine rainbows poured down like a waterfall. Especially near the god's relic, there was even a glowing mist that was like a surging river. It was a shocking scene. The god's battlefield has finally opened. Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh with emotion. But unlike the fervor and excitement of the others, he was very calm. Perhaps this was an unprecedented opportunity. But at the same time, it would be accompanied by a monstrous calamity. Chapter 26:18. While pondering, Lin Sun walked towards the outside of the city. He, Xiang Xiaoyuan, and Yu Duqiu had agreed to act separately this time. The reason was simple. He didn't want to implicate the two of them with his murderous aura. Whoosh! Outside the city, Lin Sun's figure flashed and arrived at the starry sky. He stepped forward and flew towards the god's relic that looked like a butterfly's wing. At this time, cultivators could be seen everywhere in the starry sky. Great emperors, ancestors of one Tao, it was not uncommon. And at the forefront, there were dozens of terrifying immortal auras emerging. They must be the immortals who entered Chaotian City recently. Lin soon narrowed his eyes and became vigilant. At this moment, he had already changed his appearance. He didn't need to worry about being recognized. But he didn't dare to be careless. Once his identity was seen through, those enemies who hated him would take the opportunity to attack him without hesitation. After all, this was no longer Chaotian City. The starry sky was bright and dazzling. Divine rainbows swept out from the god's relic and covered the entire universe. Quick, we can enter the god's relic by following this crack. A shout came from the front. Many figures were teleporting along a crack that extended from the god's relic. They were teleporting over at an incredible speed. Along the way, they didn't encounter any danger. They quickly disappeared from the god's relic. Damn it! The god's relic is stopping us from entering. Suddenly, an angry voice resounded through the universe. At the forefront, an immortal with white hair and beard had a gloomy expression. Let me try. At the same time, a man in green spoke. Chi. He waved his sleeve, and a treasure flew across the sky. It was a copper seal that was overflowing with light. It was plated with a thin layer of light immortal gold. It was dazzling and filled with immortal aura. As soon as the copper seal appeared, the sky collapsed. Its power was so strong that even ancestors of one Tao were terrified. It was enough to crush a group of existences like them. Without a doubt, the man in green was an immortal. He acted immediately to break open the crack and enter the god's relic. Clang! However, something shocking happened. A mysterious streak of divine rainbow shot out from that crack, blasting the copper imprint apart. One had to know that even the sky had been destroyed by the copper seal, yet the treasure had been sent flying so easily. The most terrifying things were still to come. That crack shone, and the natural laws were terrifying. An expanse of brilliant multicolored light swept out, striking that copper imprint again. Bang! An earth-shattering explosion resounded as the bronze seal that emanated an eternal aura was damaged. This treasure was clearly extraordinary. It was branded with the presence of an undying substance, and it could be said to be an immortal Tao soldier. In eternal true world, this sort of treasure could be said to be terrifying and incredibly rare. But now, this green-clothed man's copper seal was destroyed. It made everyone's heart ache. It was truly a pity. However, it was also because of this that everyone realized that not everyone could enter the god's relic. Boom! More undying beings took action, but they didn't dare activate their treasures out of fear of being destroyed, only releasing a great divine ability. That crack didn't change, surging with a magnificent multicolored mist, neutralizing his divine ability. In addition, there was an extremely powerful recoil force that swept towards that undying being. He dodged, but the starry sky behind him collapsed in an instant. Everything turned to dust. Seeing this, all the undying beings were terrified, their expressions changing drastically. Everyone, let's attack together. An undying being shouted. These existences had recently arrived at Chaotian City. At this time, they could be said to be the strongest group of existences. Facing a great fortune like the god's relic, how could they be willing to stop here? All right, Tao brothers, let's attack together. Someone responded. In the next moment, the group of undying beings activated their skills, displaying unparalleled divine abilities, gathering their strength to attack a great crack in the void. However, in the end, they were all neutralized by the power of the god's relic. Moreover, it released a terrifying divine rainbow light that forced those undying beings to continuously retreat. Now, everyone understood that the undying beings were rejected by the god's relic and couldn't enter. Many emperors let out sighs of relief. If they had to fight against the undying beings for the fortune, it would be no different from throwing their lives away. Now, the undying beings couldn't enter, and the fortune within the gods' battlefield was fated to have no fate with them. Let's go. We can't delay any longer. If this path of survival disappears, we won't be able to enter again. Let's go. Many cultivators took action and teleported through the starry sky, and they quickly vanished from the gods' ruin. Where's that Lin Sun? Why don't I see him? Come out if you have the guts. Suddenly, just as Lin Sun was about to move, a lazy voice resounded through space like thunder. Extremely far away, a gray-clothed man stood sloppily, his eyes like sharp blades sweeping the surroundings, appearing extremely arrogant. It was Nan family's Nan Tianjing. What are you shouting here for? What if you scare that guy away and he hides in Chaotian City? Won't we lose the chance to kill him then? The silver-haired old man Nan Yongchang frowned and scolded Nan Tianjing. Hurry up and move, don't miss this fortune. As long as Lin Sun dares to appear, it won't be too late to kill him then. I'm just worried that he'll flee without a fight. Who knows if he really has the guts to appear in the god's relic? Nan Tianjing muttered. Although he said that, he still immediately took action and soon disappeared. Far away, Lin Sun's black eyes were indifferent as he firmly remembered this Nan Tianjing. At the same time, he also noticed that Nan Yongchang, Nan Tianjing, and other Nan family members weren't acting alone, but together with the three immortal emperor clans, Gu clan, Li clan, and Yun clan. Unfortunately, there was no figure covered by the cloud curtain. Shaking his head, Lin Sun didn't delay and also took action. However, when he approached the rift that stretched out from the ruins of the gods, he actually suffered resistance and rejection. Lin Sun frowned and didn't force his way in. Before taking action, he left Cyan Sparrow in the inn, but there were still Ling Xuanzi and Kong Ju in the Tower of Endless. This scene made Lin Sun wonder if it was caused by Ling Xuanzi, the fourth senior brother, or Kong Ju. But before Lin Sun could react, an obscure power spread from his body and immediately resolved the rejection of the crack. Lin Sun's pupils suddenly shrank. This was the power of Jade Plate of Fate. The Jade Disc of Good Fortune contains the order of the immortal Tao from the last era, and the god's relic is a remnant from the last era. Could there be some sort of connection between the two? Lin Sun seemed to be lost in thought. Without any delay, he stepped on the crack and teleported away in an instant. The god's ruin that looked like a butterfly's wing was actually a vast and dazzling galaxy with space-time currents surging within. When he teleported over, his entire body seemed exceptionally small, like a grain of sand that had fallen into a giant whirlpool, uncontrollably drawn in. Lin Sun felt nothing but darkness in front of him, and then he lost his senses as if falling into chaos. After an unknown amount of time, Lin Sun only felt that his body suddenly sank, and an irresistible confinement force pressed on his body, which made him unable to circulate his Taoism. He suddenly opened his eyes. In his field of vision, there was a vast expanse of white immortal mist. He couldn't even see his own fingers in front of him. Beneath his feet was a hard and damp limestone. The limestone slabs were mottled, and the aura of time was astonishing. It was quiet nearby. He couldn't see the sky or the earth. It was all white all around. It turns out to be the power of the rules of heaven and earth here. Lin Sun immediately realized that the force that oppressed him and confined his Taoism came from this mysterious world, and there was no danger. However, he couldn't use his cultivation at all. Even his divine awareness couldn't spread out. This made Lin Sun frown. If he couldn't use his cultivation, if he encountered any danger, he would be completely finished. After sensing in silence for a long time, Lin Sun stepped forward. The limestone slabs under his feet were more than 2 feet long, like a path, leading to the depths of the white immortal mist. Fortunately, no mishaps occurred all along the way, and no mishaps occurred. Besides the limestone path beneath his feet that seemed to be endless, only the boundless mist that existed everywhere remained. Is this really the god's ruin? After 30 minutes, Lin Sun gradually frowned. He found nothing and saw nothing. Everything was quiet, as if he was the only one left in the world. What the hell is this place? Until 2 hours later, suddenly, in the depths of the white mist in the distance, there was an angry curse. But soon, there was no sound. Lin Sun thought to himself, could it be that everyone who entered the god's secret realm is walking on this limestone road like me? If so, it was relatively safe. At least, everyone's cultivation was in a state of suppression, so even if they met enemies, there was nothing to be afraid of. Before long, another voice sounded, strange. Strange, why is the god's ruin like this? Why is there nothing else except the limestone road under our feet? It's unsettling if the power of confinement is not lifted. Let's go. Maybe everything will return to normal when we leave this damn place. Hearing these voices, Lin Sun became calmer. Since everyone was in the same situation, there was no need to worry about any danger. God. What is this? Is it the central immortal palace that is rumored to be the most supreme in the last era? Hurry up! A wave of exclamations of shock sounded out from the extremely far-away mist, and it revealed excitement as if they'd noticed some extraordinary scene. Lin Sun couldn't help but speed up. Not long after, his vision suddenly changed. The white mist became thin, but he could still see the scene in the distance. The first thing that came into his sight was an immortal palace that stood above the clouds. It seemed to be made of immortal gold, and it emitted brilliant immortal light. Chapter 26:19. It was indeed an immortal palace that stood high above the ninth heaven. Its whole body was bathed in dazzling immortal light, and there were millions of divine lights falling down. Vaguely, one could see a plaque made of strange, immortal gold hanging on the immortal palace, Central Immortal Court. On both sides of the stone pillars, 2 lines of brilliant Great Way immortal characters were engraved. They were, overlooking the stars like a blue sky falling, striking the golden bell, the gathering of immortals. Towering over the clouds like the sky, beating the jade drum, thousands of gods come. Every word was like a gem, piercing through the 9 heavens and 10 earths. When Lin Sun saw the Central Immortal Court for the first time, he couldn't help but be shocked. That place was simply the dwelling place of gods and the place where immortals discussed Tao. It was too sacred. Could the supreme divine treasury of the last era be hidden in the Central Immortal Court? It's rumored that in the immortal civilization of the last era, the Central Immortal Court ruled the 4,900 continents of the immortal world and was the supreme existence of the immortal way. I didn't expect that the rumor was true. Look, is that the battlefield of gods? There was a burst of exclamation nearby. Lin Sun looked up and found that with the Central Immortal Court as the center, 49 bluestone paths emerged in the surroundings. At the end of each bluestone path, there was a petal-shaped Taoist field. Each Taoist field was extremely large, paved with immortal stones and divine jades, and covered with a strange and mysterious aura of the immortal way. At this time, there were already thousands of figures standing in the 49 Taoist field. Impressively, they were the practitioners who had entered the relics of gods earlier. At the end of the bluestone path where Lin Sun was, there were also hundreds of figures standing in the Taoist field. There were men and women, old and young, and their cultivations were different. At this time, all eyes were looking at the Central Immortal Court in the distant sky, and they were discussing animatedly with different expressions. Lin Sun walked straight forward without changing his expression. He had already noticed that the oppressive power of rules still hadn't disappeared, which meant that he couldn't use his cultivation. He wasn't the only one in such a situation, and it was the same for other practitioners present. Otherwise, these guys who had arrived in advance would have rushed to the Central Immortal Court at the first time to fight for the fortune in it. This is the battlefield of the gods? When Lin Sun set foot on the Taoist field at the end of the bluestone path, he immediately saw a huge battlefield floating in the sky not far from the Taoist field. It was large enough for 2 great emperors to fight in it. One could see that it was completely light golden in color, as if it was forged from divine gold. At the same time, numerous laws of order were inscribed on it. The ground of the battlefield was soaked in the color of dried blood, and it hadn't faded even after tens of thousands of years. It was a horrifying sight. There were a total of 49 battlefields like this, and they were spread out not far from each of the dojos. According to the ancient records of my clan, every 100,000 years in the last era, the central immortal court would hold a battle of the heaven chosen. The winner of the battlefield of the gods would be able to enter the central immortal court and obtain a supreme inheritance. An old man said in a low voice. Many people were familiar with this legend. It was said that those who could participate in the battle of the heavenly chosen were the strongest existences in the immortal world. They were known as the overlords of an era. It was a real battle between peerless figures. It was known as the most brilliant, hot-blooded, and intense battle in the immortal world. At that time, peerless gods, peerless beauties, and beautiful fairies would enter the battlefield of the gods. It could be said that heroes would fight for hegemony, and thousands of flowers would compete for beauty. And the one who could fight his way out of the battlefield of the gods would be the chosen one of that era. He would be able to enter the central immortal court, stand proudly at the peak of eternity, and achieve ultimate transcendence. Lin Sun had also heard of these legends, but he didn't expect that this grand event from the last era might be true. It seems that in order to reach the central immortal palace, one must go through layers of selection and battles in the battlefield of the gods. Someone muttered. It was said that the battle of the heavenly chosen from the last era had many rules. The first stage was called Arena Defense. In the 49 dojos, the contestants would fight in the arena. As long as one could obtain 9 consecutive victories in the battlefield of the gods, he would stand out and enter the second stage, Great Hunt. The duration of the arena defense was 7 days. During the 7 days, even if one was defeated, there was still a chance to fight again. After 7 days, the arena defense battle would come to an end. What was worth mentioning was that as long as one successfully defended the arena, they would receive a generous reward. And those who could go through the selection and enter the central immortal court would obtain the supreme fortune hidden within. Thinking of this, many people's emotions surged. And here I thought that the god's relic was very dangerous, known as the #1 forbidden zone, with no chance of survival. But now it seems that it's just an arena battle. Someone laughed. If it's just an arena battle, that would be great. Someone's eyes were filled with worry. The rumored arena defense battle was a battle of life and death. This was even more terrifying than encountering any danger or mishap. After all, if one wanted to obtain 9 consecutive victories, casualties were unavoidable. And this was only the first stage. It was said that the casualties in the second stage, Great Hunt, would be even higher. Who can be sure that what we're facing is the battle of the heavenly chosen from the last era? You should know that the last era was already destroyed. Someone was skeptical. When you arrive here, you already have no choice. Didn't you notice that everyone's cultivation has been suppressed? This is the rule of the battle of the heavenly chosen. No one is allowed to fight without permission. Someone explained softly. 49 dojos, 49 battlefield of the gods, 7 days of arena defense battle. Does this mean that just the first stage will eliminate more than half of the competitors? Someone sucked in a breath of cold air. Many people's expressions also changed slightly. Lin Sun heard all of this and thought to himself, this rule is not bad. At least I don't have to worry about sneak attacks. Oh, that guy actually came to court death. Suddenly, a surprised voice sounded. In front of this dojo, a handsome man in a gray robe turned around and looked at Lin Sun playfully. Lin Sun. The nearby powerhouses who were looking at the central immortal palace and the battlefield of the gods also noticed Lin Sun, who had just arrived, and couldn't help but reveal a look of surprise. Not long ago, The discussion about whether Lin Sun would appear in the god's relic caused a lot of discussion in Chaotian City. The reason was that there were too many immortal emperor clans who wanted to kill Lin Sun, not to mention old opponents like Wen, Heng, Luo, and Zhu. Just the 4 Eastern imperial clans were enough to make people's hearts turn cold. They were the behemoths of the 7th heaven. If it was anyone else in Lin Sun's position, how would they dare to enter the god's relic? But Lin Sun came here. This was beyond many people's expectations. At this time, Lin Sun's cultivation was suppressed, so he naturally showed his true appearance, which was why the handsome man in the gray robe, Nan Tianjing, recognized him. Before entering the god's relic, you asked me if I had the guts, and now you say that I came to court death. In that case, when the battle begins, don't be a coward. Lin Sun's expression was indifferent, and his words were casual, but his killing intent was obvious. Nan Tianjing couldn't help but sneer, and his eyes were as cold as a sharp blade. He said, "This is what you said, only life and death, not admitting defeat." "Don't worry, even if you admit defeat, I won't spare you." Lin Sun's expression was as usual. "Humph." Nearby, Nan Yongqiang snorted coldly and said, "Tianjing, don't waste your breath on a dying man. When the battle begins, just take his dog life." There were many practitioners of the Nan clan nearby. At this moment, they all looked indifferent and looked at Lin Sun as if they were looking at a dead man. This made many people tremble. Needless to say, if the battle began, Lin Sun would definitely become the target of public criticism. "Old bastard, those who humiliate others will be humiliated by others. Don't blame me for not reminding you that in the battle, I will definitely cut off your head." Lin Sun sneered. Nan Yongqiang didn't hide his killing intent towards him in front of the battle tablet, so he could take this opportunity to behead him. Nan Yongqiang's face turned green, and his killing intent surged. Unfortunately, there was no deterrence at all. All the people present were suppressed, so he could only stare at Lin Sun. Lin Sun is sharp-tongued and boastful. He doesn't even know that he is about to die. It's a pity that I'm not in the same Taoist field as him, otherwise, I will be the first to kill him. Suddenly, a cold and indifferent voice sounded in the distance. Lin Sun looked up and saw a valiant man in an emperor's armor with long hair looking at him from a Taoist field in the distance. His face was full of killing intent. "Whose trash is this?" Lin Sun asked, very puzzled. He really didn't have any impression. Everyone looked at each other. That was Li Feijing, the 8th-level emperor of the Li clan, an unparalleled ruthless man whose fame was even greater than Nan Tianjing's. But Lin Sun directly threw the word trash at him. "Presumptuous! How dare you? Lin Sun, you should be hacked to pieces." In the distance, many people around Li Feijing cursed angrily, even more agitated than Li Feijing. "A bunch of trash," Lin Sun casually threw a sentence at them. This time, everyone could see that Lin Sun clearly did it on purpose. Just as he said, those who humiliate others will be humiliated by others. There were a total of 49 Taoist field. At this time, the cultivators distributed among them also noticed this scene and saw Lin Sun's existence. Some of the immortal emperor clans who had long hated Lin Sun couldn't help but sneer. This guy obviously didn't understand his own situation. As for those who had no enmity with Lin Sun, they all had different expressions. It was fine if he was arrogant in the past, but to clamor in front of the battlefield of gods. Wasn't he courting death? This Lin Sun was really as unscrupulous as the rumors said. Some people admired Lin Sun's astonishing courage, but they could only admire him in their hearts. They didn't dare to say it out loud, for fear of being implicated. There was no other way. Almost all of these 49 Taoist fields had enemies of Lin Sun. This was really a target for all. However, it was in such a situation that Lin Sun said leisurely, "Why don't you raise your hand one by one and tell me your name so that I can remember it? Otherwise, when I die, I won't remember who you are." Chapter 26:20. His words resounded through the surroundings, and it caused everyone to be stunned. After that, it was like they'd poked a hornet's nest, causing a wave of furious curses to resound from all directions, and it was directed at Lin Sun. "You're really tired of living." Everyone heard that. "It's this fellow who's courting death. If the heavens desire death, then it will definitely make one go mad. Lin Sun, I'll watch how you're slaughtered with my own two eyes." All sorts of threats and furious curses covered the heavens and the earth. Lin Sun paid no attention to them, and his expression remained tranquil like an ancient well. He swept his gaze over and committed the owners of those voices to memory. Some were familiar enemies, and some were completely unfamiliar faces. Suddenly, he noticed that the cultivators in the vicinity of where he stood had instinctively moved far away, and they seemed as if they were deeply afraid of being implicated by him. It was human nature to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. Lin Sun didn't really take it seriously. But once the arena battles began, then he would absolutely not hold back if he encountered these people. Time flowed by. More and more cultivators walked out from the boundless white mist and arrived at the 49 dojos. Lin Sun noticed that some people had tried to change dojos, yet they were obstructed by a shapeless force, and it caused them to have no choice but to stop. Obviously, the 49 dojos didn't interfere with each other. This meant that if the battle of arena defense were to begin, then the enemies he had to face would be the cultivators on the grounds he resided in. Clang! Suddenly, a wave of the sound of a bell that sounded like the sound of nature resounded. On the stone pillar at the side of the central immortal palace where the words "Strike the golden bell" were inscribed, a bright golden image of a bronze bell surged into appearance and glowed brilliantly. Instantly, the battlefield of the gods before the 49 dojos seemed as if it had awakened from eternal silence, and it emanated a boundless and thick aura of battle that suffused the world. At this moment, all the cultivators that stood in the dojos sensed a strand of a miraculous mental force. The arena battles. Life and death. The time limit was 7 days. No one would wait beyond the time limit. In an instant, all the spectators were stirred. Everyone realized that the rumors were actually true. The miraculous mental force caused the rules of the arena battles to appear in the hearts of all the cultivators, and it allowed them to instantly come to an understanding. Fighting in the battlefield of the gods, I can't use any power other than my own cultivation and natal treasure. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. Obviously, this meant that some of his trump cards couldn't be used. If he wanted to defend the arena successfully, he could only rely on his own strength to fight. Ha ha, Lin Sun, without your trump card, what are you going to use to threaten the One Dao ancestor? Nan Yongchang was the first to laugh loudly, extremely delighted. Other people present also looked at Lin Sun in a subtle way. In the past years, Lin Sun had killed many Tao ancestors, but almost all of them were believed to have been killed by Lin Sun with some taboo trump card. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to be a match for the One Dao ancestor with his cultivation of the 8th level of the Emperor realm. But now, in the battle of defending the arena, it was forbidden to use these trump cards, which undoubtedly weakened the threat brought by Lin Sun. Lin Sun didn't say anything, but he sneered in his heart. 18 years ago, it was indeed difficult for him to kill an emperor ancestor in a head-on battle. But now, even if he didn't use the Nirvana Flame of Order, he could kill the emperor ancestor easily. Why don't you speak? Ha ha, there is no way out now. You deserve to suffer today. Nan Yongchang laughed happily, full of complacency and ambition. Lin Sun couldn't help but laugh and let out a long sigh. Old man, if these are your last words, it is destined to become a joke for thousands of years. In the future, when the descendants of your Nan clan see these words engraved on the tombstone, I'm afraid they will die of shame and indignation. Everyone. Nan Yongchang almost couldn't believe his ears. After a while, he was so angry that he laughed and pointed at Lin Sun. Little bastard, you, Lin Sun interrupted. The more bullshit you talk, the faster you die. I really don't want to live. See you on the battlefield of gods later. Nan Yongchang's eyes widened. He only felt that his head was full of blood, and he was about to explode with anger. Elder, don't get angry with a dead man. I will kill him first later. Nan Tianjing looked cold. Clang! Another bell chime resounded in the world. An expanse of gorgeous golden immortal light surged into appearance before the 49 Dao grounds, and it paved a path that led directly to the battlefield of the gods. At the same time, 7 stars appeared in the sky, shining brilliantly. They represented the 7-day deadline, and with each passing day, a star would be extinguished. The 49 Taoist fields became restless. Some cultivators who had been waiting for a long time rushed to the Golden Passage as soon as possible. Sure enough, in just a moment, they appeared on the battlefield of gods. However, before the arena battles could begin, the surroundings of every single one of the grounds were covered by a vast expanse of white mist, and it was as if they'd transformed into 49 completely isolated minor worlds. They couldn't see the scenes in the other Taoist fields, but no one paid attention to this. They all looked at the battlefield of gods in the distance. Everyone knew that only those who won 10 consecutive victories could enter the second level, the Great Hunt. The huge battlefield of gods was engraved with the traces of time, but it was still immortal and stood in the void. It would be the stage for hegemony. Lin Sun, get up here. A figure arrived on the arena first. Unexpectedly, it was neither Nan Yongchang nor Nan Tianjing, but a silver-robed man with a dignified figure and a cold look. He didn't hide his hatred at all. He was also from the Nan family, and his name was Nan Tianba. He was at the peak of the 8th level of the Emperor realm, not much weaker than Nan Tianjing. Tianba, you are too impatient. Nan Tianjing couldn't help feeling helpless that he couldn't be the first to get on the arena. Nan Tianba said, Brother, don't use a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. I can deal with Lin Sun. His voice was full of conceit and pride. Well, Tianjing, you are already famous. It's time to give Tianba a chance to make a name for himself. Lin Sun is notorious for his misdeeds. Killing him can barely be regarded as a stepping stone for Tianba. Nan Yongchang said, twisting his beard. The other cultivators on the Taoist sanctum didn't say a word and consciously took a step back. Everyone could see that the Nan family was determined to eradicate Lin Sun as soon as possible. Then you have to be careful. Although this person can't use some trump cards that can threaten the Emperor ancestor, his combat power can't be underestimated. Otherwise, it's impossible for him to leave his name on the Xian list. To deal with him, Nan Tianjing warned. Although he wanted to kill Lin Sun, he obviously didn't underestimate Lin Sun and appeared very calm. But before he finished, he was interrupted by Nan Tianba with a smile. That's enough. I already know this. Brother, I left my name on the Xian list thousands of years ago. He suddenly looked at Lin Sun. What are you waiting for? Get up here and die. His voice was like a clap of thunder, resounding through the universe. Clang! A brilliant violet spear appeared in his palm, and it emanated a peerlessly fierce glow that caused his figure to seem like a peerless god of war with a domineering aura that shot into the sky. Many people's expressions changed. This Nan Tianba seemed a little arrogant, but he was obviously a ruthless person with unparalleled strength and terrifying cultivation. At this moment, Lin Sun walked up the golden path, and his tall figure instantly appeared on the battlefield of gods. At this moment, the power of rules that suppressed his body disappeared, and his cultivation was like an ancient fierce beast awakening, surging and roaring all over his body. Feeling this familiar power, Lin Sun couldn't help but let out a satisfied sigh. Boom! Nan Tianba waved the purple spear and attacked immediately. He was obviously impatient and didn't intend to waste the slightest time. He wanted to kill Lin Sun and make a name for himself. The void exploded. The purple spear waved and rolled up a dazzling and violent waterfall of lightning. Faintly, countless stars collapsed in it, creating a scene of destruction. Boom! This attack was indeed too fierce and overbearing, and the cultivators in the distance couldn't help but reveal a surprised expression. Nan Yongqiang twirled his beard and smiled, and his eyes revealed a look of admiration. Nan Tianjing also nodded secretly. It could be seen from this attack that Nan Tianbao wasn't careless. He directly used his real strength and released his cultivation to the extreme. Boom! On the battlefield of gods, the thunder rumbled, and the purple light accompanied the purple spear. At this moment, Nan Tianbao was like a god, giving people a strong sense of oppression. Lin Sun stood still, his breath indifferent, and he didn't move, as if he was frightened by this sudden attack. It gave people the feeling that he would be completely smashed in the next moment. The contrast between their auras was too great. Seeing that the incomparably overbearing attack was imminent, Lin Sun didn't move, but the purple spear suddenly stopped in the air in the rain of light and couldn't move any further. And Nan Tianba's rushing figure suddenly stopped, as if he had hit an indestructible barrier, and his figure almost couldn't bear it. His pupils suddenly shrank. In the Taoist sanctum, everyone was also shocked. No one knew when Lin Sun had firmly grasped Nan Tianba's halberd with one hand. His white and slender fingers were like the shackles of heaven, making the purple halberd unable to move an inch or move. This, everyone's face changed. How could such a terrifying attack be caught by Lin Sun with his bare hands? This scene was completely beyond everyone's expectation. Open! Nan Tianba shouted and urged his cultivation to the extreme, so that his figure was steaming with endless purple light, surrounded by countless purple laws, and his whole body seemed to be burning. However, the purple spear still didn't move. Not good. Nan Tianba's face changed completely. When he was about to abandon the spear and use other means of fighting, he saw, as Lin Sun exerted force on his wrist, he suddenly twisted. Nan Tianba's purple spear flew out of his hand, and his whole body was uncontrollably dragged towards Lin Sun. At the same time, Lin Sun slapped out. Crack! An incomparably resounding slap resounded. Nan Tianba was sent spinning like a spinning top by this slap. He spun more than 10 times in the air before fiercely smashing into the ground a few hundred meters away. His entire body twitched violently as blood spurted out from his nose and mouth. His cheekbones were broken and caved in. The whole battlefield of gods trembled violently. This slap simply shook the heavens and the earth, and it shook the universe. P.S. There is an emergency. Goldfish is out, don't wait for me. Chapter 26-21. Nan Tianba was dumbfounded. This slap simply shattered his pride, face, and lofty character, and he felt an unprecedented humiliation. Since he started cultivating, he had never encountered such humiliation. Moreover, he was sent flying by a slap at the beginning of the fight. On the dojo, hundreds of cultivators felt pain in their hearts. Their guts trembled and they could not believe it. They were both peerless figures who had left their names on the Xian list, and they were both peak 8th level emperors, but Nan Tianba seemed a bit too weak. Nan Yongqiang's face was ugly, and he was bewildered. Nan Tianjing clenched his fists, and his eyes were cold. This slap was filled with great humiliation. It made them feel ashamed, and they felt an indescribable chill. This Lin Sun, how could he be so strong? It was true that Lin Sun was ranked first on the wanted list, but in the eyes of the immortal emperor clans from the 7th heaven, this so-called wanted list was issued for the cultivators of the vast thousand world. Since ancient times, who had ever seen an immortal emperor clan's powerhouse being wanted? It was true that Lin Sun had killed more than one emperor ancestor. But all the inferences and rumors said that Lin Sun had achieved this by relying on some trump card. But now, the power of rules in the battlefield of the gods did not allow such external forces as trump cards to appear. This also meant that the battles in the battlefield of the gods were the fairest fights, and the cultivation and combat power of the two sides were compared. But now, the power displayed by Lin Sun's slap clearly had the power to crush Nan Tianba. This completely exceeded the expectations of Nan Yongqiang and the others. "I'm going to kill you!" Nan Tianba roared, and his long hair danced wildly as he rushed towards Lin Sun. Boom! On his body, purple thunder and lightning evolved into a strange talisman. Various laws of thunder interweaved to form the sun, moon, mountains, and rivers. As soon as it appeared, it emitted a destructive aura. Great Sun and Moon Thunder Talisman. This was the condensation of Nan Tianba's talent power. In the seventh heaven of the eternal world, this talent was rated as a top-grade 8-star talent. It was extremely terrifying. Once it was used, it was like wielding the thunder of heavenly punishment, suppressing all evil. The void shook and was covered by blazing thunder. The great Sun and Moon Thunder Talisman was like a heavenly tribulation, enveloping Lin Sun. Lin Sun grasped the purple spear and thrust it out casually. Boom! The talisman exploded above Lin Sun's head, and thunder and light rained down. Lin Sun was completely vulnerable. "Tianba, retreat!" Nan Yongqiang shouted, and his old face changed. How could he not see that Nan Tianba was no match for Lin Sun? However, it was too late. Lin Sun's figure flashed, and he rushed forward. The purple spear in his hand was like a sharp streamer, tearing the sky and producing a deafening explosion. The bone-piercing dangerous aura caused Nan Tianba's body to stiffen. His expression greatly changed as he sobered up from his rage, but it was already too late to retreat. "Condense!" He let out a roar, and his eyes turned red. Boundless profound light burst out from his body and condensed into a light shield. The silhouette of the black tortoise was faintly discernible, and it gave off an indestructible aura. Xuanwu Overbearing Shield. It was a supreme technique that was passed down in the Nan clan. Its defensive strength was extremely formidable, and once the black tortoise appeared, even ghosts and gods would find it difficult to break through. Boom! When the purple spear arrived, it was visible to the naked eye that the black tortoise shield shook violently. Then it produced countless cracks and exploded. The unparalleled sharpness of the spear pierced through Nan Tianba's protective combat power layer by layer, and the light rained down like a waterfall. Then, with a puff, the spear pierced through Nan Tianba's body, bringing out a handful of scarlet hot blood and sprinkling in the void. The power of one blow broke the black tortoise shield and pierced through Nan Tianba. The overbearing and bloody scene shocked everyone in the Taoist field. Their scalps were numb and they almost stopped breathing. How could this be? Damn it! Nan Yongqiang and other strong practitioners of the Nan clan cried out in disbelief with their eyes wide open. On the battlefield of gods, Nan Tianba's face froze and his eyes widened. Looking at the purple spear piercing into his body, he suddenly felt a great irony. This spear was originally his natal monarch weapon, but it had now become a lethal weapon that had defeated him. "You won't be the first to die. Why are you so anxious?" Lin Sun sighed softly. Before his voice died away, he raised the purple spear and Nan Tianba's body was also thrown into the air. Bang! Nan Tianba's body exploded, and blood rained down like a waterfall. An 8th-level emperor of the Nan clan of the 7th heaven was killed by his own spear, and his blood splattered in the sky. This scene made Lin Sun's tall figure look like a demon god. It also made the Taoist field fall into silence, and everyone was shocked. Everyone was stunned, and their eyes were in a trance. Too strong. In this battle, Lin Sun showed absolute power from the beginning. Whether it was slapping Nan Tianba away or killing him with the spear, he was clean and neat, and Nan Tianba couldn't struggle at all. Not to mention resisting, even if he risked his life, it would be futile. It was also at this time that people deeply realized what it meant to have a great reputation. Lin Sun could be famous in the vast 1,000 battle domains, and he could run amok all the way to Chaotian City. It was not as simple as a few trump cards. Whoosh! On the battlefield of the gods, a golden immortal light emerged and swept into Lin Sun's body. This was a mysterious token. If he defeated an opponent, he would get a ray of immortal light as a token. When he won 9 battles in a row, the immortal light would turn into a message talisman, and it would become the token to enter the second round, Great Hunt. Lin Sun completely ignored the murderous gazes of the Nan clan and started to clean up the spoils of war. Nan Tianba's storage ring and various emperor weapons in his natal emperor world were all collected by Lin Sun. A dignified 8th-level emperor, a noble of the Nan clan, only has these few treasures on him. Isn't it too shameful? After finishing the inventory, Lin Sun couldn't help but frown. The Taoist field was silent, and everyone had a strange look in their eyes. Nan Tianba was dead, and it was fine that his belongings were taken, but he was also criticized like this. This was too much of a bully. Nan Yongqiang and the other Nan clan members were so angry that their lungs were about to explode. Little bastard, break. I'm going to kill you right now. Nan Yongqiang was about to go to the battlefield of the gods, but he was stopped by Nan Tianjing. Let me do it. Nan Tianjing said every word as if squeezed out from between his teeth, revealing a bone-chilling killing intent. Nan Tianjing's expression was even colder and scarier. Tianjing, Tianba is already dead. You can't have any more mishaps. Let me do it, Nan Yongqiang said. Although he was furious, he knew very well that ordinary people couldn't be a match for Lin Sun. No, let me do it. Nan Tianjing's eyes were as cold as a knife. I've cultivated for 10,300 years, and I'm only one step away from the 9th level of Emperor Ancestor Realm. If I retreat now, my state of mind will definitely be shaken. Without this invincible will, how can I forge the path of Emperor Ancestor Realm? Nan Yongqiang's expression was uncertain, and he was extremely hesitant. On the battlefield of the gods, Lin Sun sneered. You really talk a lot of nonsense. Didn't you say the most before? Don't waste time, come up and accept your death. His voice was full of sarcasm, which made the clansmen of the Nan clan seething with anger. This damned Lin Sun was too arrogant. You also saw how domineering and insufferably arrogant he is. If I don't kill him, he will definitely become my inner demon. As he spoke, Nan Tianjing stepped straight onto the golden corridor, and his figure instantly appeared on the battlefield of the gods. Tianjing, be careful. Nan Yongqiang couldn't help but remind him, a little worried. Boom. Nan Tianjing's gray robe fluttered, and his thin figure suddenly became majestic and dazzling. Endless dark cyan laws interweaved and condensed into a cyan sun above his head, illuminating the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Looking closely, the cyan sun gave people a sense of perfection, glory, and immeasurable, which meant that his cultivation in this realm had truly reached perfection. Just as he said, he only needed an opportunity to reach the Emperor Ancestor realm. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and said, I hope you can hold on a little longer. Otherwise, it will be too boring to kill. Nan Tianjing's expression was cold, and he said, Don't worry, on my path of cultivation, you are destined to be a stepping stone. Clang! An impassioned and loud murderous sound came from the cyan sun above Nan Tianjing's head, shaking the void and making it tremble. Immediately afterward, a spear emitting terrifying Tao light slowly emerged from the cyan sun, and with every inch that was revealed, the terrifying Tao light blazed a little brighter. When the complete spear appeared in the world, everyone on the dojo felt a stabbing pain in their eyes, and their minds seemed to be shocked, giving rise to an inexplicable feeling of fear. Myriad Transformation Spear? Someone exclaimed. Looking closely, the spear was 8 meters long and filled with monstrous Tao light. The body of the spear was like the spine that propped up the sky, and the tip of the spear was like a guillotine, dazzling and peerlessly sharp. Vaguely, a vague primordial Tao rune appeared on the spear, flickering in the Tao light, and its aura was boundlessly terrifying. No, this isn't the true Myriad Transformation Spear, but it has a faint charm that belongs to the Myriad Transformation Spear. Someone whispered. The myriad transformation spear was the most precious treasure of the Nan family in the seventh heaven region. It was rumored that it was born from the origin power of the heavenly order, and its power was unfathomable. Only supreme figures who had set foot on the immortal path could use such a treasure. Good, Nan Tianjing didn't lose his mind because of anger. Nan Yongqiang breathed a sigh of relief. Brother, kill him and avenge Tianba. The members of the Nan family even shouted and cheered for Nan Tianjing, full of murderous intent. This spear is extraordinary. It can probably be sold for a lot of eternal void source crystals. In the battlefield of the gods, Lin Sun looked at Nan Tianjing's spear and said casually, "When we fight later, I will be careful so as not to damage this treasure. If that happens, it won't sell for a good price." Everyone had a dumbfounded expression on their faces. The faces of the members of the Nan family darkened. This damn Lin Sun was too arrogant. Only Nan Tianjing remained calm and said indifferently, "You want my spear and I want your life. P.S. My train of thought was a bit slow, so the second part was a little late." Chapter 26-22. Clang. The spear made a long, passionate sound. Before his voice died away, Nan Tianjing had already launched an attack. His figure was like a bolt of lightning, like a cyan sun, rushing toward Lin Sun. Just that kind of power was not something that Nan Tianba could compare to. Lin Sun looked calm. Nan Tianjing was indeed a tough guy, a peerless figure in the same realm. But for Lin Sun, his vision had already surpassed his peers. He could even suppress the emperor ancestor, so how could Nan Tianjing compare to him? The only thing that pressured Lin Sun was that the spear in Nan Tianjing's hand was indeed a rare life emperor weapon. It was full of unparalleled killing intent and was extremely powerful. Boom! The light of the way filled the sky and broke through the clouds. On the battlefield of the gods, layers of ripples of the great way appeared and intertwined in the void, turning into an invisible defensive force. It was these restrictive forces that had been engraved in the last era that prevented the aftermath of the battle from sweeping out. Otherwise, it would have caused an unpredictable disaster. The battle between Lin Sun and Nan Tianjing produced the most brilliant sparks as soon as they clashed, gorgeous and beautiful. The battle between the two was too fast. Lin Sun's fist and palm prints and Nan Tianjing's spear collided in the void. It was a confrontation between wisps of the Great Way, accompanied by a scene of creation. In the end, they rushed past each other and separated into two parts of the sky. They both looked back at each other, their eyes as cold as lightning, frightening people's souls. The two confronted each other indifferently and hostile. Many people's hearts were beating fast. This was really a rare battle. They were both peerless 8th-level emperors. It was an unprecedented battle that belonged to this realm. The next moment they collided again, as fast as two bolts of lightning. Nan Tianjing opened his mouth and spat out a seal. It was the power of interweaving laws, dazzling. The sky and earth trembled, as if the universe had been destroyed. The four directions were unstable, and the earth, fire, wind, and water appeared at the same time. However, no matter what kind of cultivation method he used, it was easily resolved by Lin Sun. Everyone was shocked. Lin Sun's combat strength was too incredible. He was unarmed and was only at the middle stage of this realm, but he could fight against Nan Tianjing, who was at the perfection realm. It was unimaginable. Kill! Nan Tianjing's face was cold. He was like a glowing green sun shining brightly. Raging flames surged as he walked over step by step. His aura was several times stronger than before. Everyone shuddered with fear. Obviously, Nan Tianjing had utilized some sort of terrifying secret technique to multiply his combat strength. This was undoubtedly terrifying. Nan Yongqiang had a complicated look in his eyes. Although Nan Tianjing's secret art could double his battle strength, it had a huge drawback. It would damage his Dao foundation. But obviously, in order to kill Lin Sun, Nan Tianjing had completely ignored all this. Rumble! Nan Tianjing stepped forward, his figure shattering the void. He was like a god burning himself to destroy everything in the world. He turned his body into a great sun and moved across the 9 heavens, covering Lin Sun below. He attacked continuously with his spear, producing an earth-shattering killing power. At this moment Lin Sun frowned. He also felt a kind of pressure. He sensed the shocking transformation of Nan Tianjing's combat strength and realized that the secret technique Nan Tianjing used was very likely similar to Yazi's Fury and Battle Saint technique. It could double his combat strength in a short period of time. Nan Tianjing became more and more relaxed. His power was tyrannical as he galloped through the battlefield, killing wantonly. It gave people the feeling that he had the upper hand. As for Lin Sun, he began to fall into a passive position. Lin Sun, you are indeed a great enemy. In the eternal true world, you can be called a peerless figure that is 1 in 10,000, but you are too arrogant. You don't understand what it means to say that there is always someone better than you. Nan Tianjing's eyes were indifferent. In the 7th heaven, existences like him had killed their way out of thousands of enemies. They had experienced all kinds of bloody battles to obtain their current achievements. Brother, quickly kill him. Leave his primordial spirit behind and refine it into a treasure. Let him beg for death for eternity. On the Taoist sanctum, some members of the Nan clan were excited and shouted with deep hatred. If these are your last words, it's appropriate. Now, I will let you see what you mean by there is always someone better than you. Lin Sun, who had been in a passive position, suddenly chuckled. His tall figure suddenly stretched out, and he attacked from his passive position. His power was like a volcano that had been silent for countless years, and it erupted at this moment. This counterattack was too sudden, and no one expected it. Just as Lin Sun was about to be suppressed, he suddenly erupted, and his momentum suddenly became several times stronger. Boom! He attacked Nan Tianjing head-on, still barehanded, but the power was completely different from before. It was majestic, and every attack showed an unparalleled momentum. Under such an impact, Nan Tianjing was forced to retreat. His body was in pain, and soon, his flesh was swept by Lin Sun's fist force, and traces of blood appeared. Nan Tianjing's expression immediately changed. At this moment, Lin Sun seemed to have changed into a different person. Was this his true power? Lin Sun crossed his fist with the momentum of hammering the sky. With a movement of his arm, the void collapsed, and the defensive power of the battlefield of gods was shaken. Not to mention Nan Tianjing, even the spectators were moved and deeply shocked by such a scene. This turn of events was too swift, and it caught all of them off guard and caused them to feel disbelief. Kill! Nan Tianjing shouted and attacked with all his strength, trying to suppress Lin Sun again. That's all, Lin Sun sighed softly. Around Lin Sun's body, mysterious and unpredictable sword qi, like the flowing light of the universe, shot out in the battlefield of gods. In the deafening collision, Nan Tianjing's spear buzzed and wailed. He tried to dodge, but he couldn't. He was hit by the sword qi and began to be injured. First, with a puff on his left shoulder, a string of blood splashed high, and one of his arms was almost cut off. Then, with a crack, the feather crown on his head was broken. His hair was disheveled, and a trace of blood appeared on his forehead. In the Taoist sanctum, there was a burst of exclamations. The clansmen of the Nan family couldn't help but change their expressions and feel horrified. They were still expecting Nan Tianjing to suppress Lin Sun. But in just a moment, everything was reversed, and Nan Tianjing fell into a dangerous situation. You hid your strength so well. Nan Tianjing's face was gloomy. He thought that Lin Sun had reserved his strength and waited until this critical moment to kill him. It was too insidious and cunning. I'm just worried that the spear won't be sold at a good price if it's damaged, said Lin Sun seriously. Hearing this, a group of people had the urge to vomit blood. In such a life-and-death battle, Lin Sun still cared about these worldly possessions. This was clearly a mockery and provocation to Nan Tianjing. At the same time, people were also horrified. Lin Sun's combat strength had changed so much. They had all seen Nan Tianjing's strength. But even under such circumstances, Nan Tianjing's power was still suppressed by Lin Sun. At this time, in the battlefield of gods, Nan Tianjing's hair was disheveled, and he was injured in many places. He was very embarrassed and his face was livid. "Tianjing, come back!" Nan Yongqiang shouted. He felt deeply uneasy. Lin Sun's strength was too strong, and he had exceeded his expectations again and again. "I haven't lost yet." Nan Tianjing ignored Lin Sun. Covered with the power of Cyan Law, he swooped down at Lin Sun again. At this time, his frontal bone glowed, and a little red man appeared. Standing in front of his eyebrows, it shook a transparent spear and pressed forward. Lin Sun's whole body was covered with Taoist light and turned into a dazzling light. Like a big abyss, he struck forward. This was a fierce collision. The two had fought head-on for countless times. Secret skills competed with each other, and it was like two worlds colliding. From time to time, there were broken fragments of the law of great ways. However, it didn't take long for Nan Tianjing's entire right arm holding the spear to be broken. Bone fragments and blood splashed everywhere, and he groaned in pain. "Tianjing!" Gu Yongqiang shouted. His face changed completely, and he became anxious. "Retreat, retreat!" Nan Tianjing's eyes flashed with deep unwillingness, but he also knew that it was futile to continue fighting. Instead, it was very likely that he would suffer. However, Lin Sun didn't give him a chance to retreat at all. The moment Nan Tianjing's right arm was broken, Lin Sun chased after him and launched a violent attack. On the battlefield of deities, Taoist sounds rumbled, and the power of the densely packed prohibitions tumbled. It could be imagined how fierce the battle was. Swish! Suddenly, like a flash of light, a rain of blood appeared in the sky. Lin Sun cut off one of Nan Tianjing's thighs, and blood was dripping. Everyone was shocked, and their scalps were about to explode. Nan Tianjing's face was beyond recognition, and he was hideous and twisted. However, he didn't risk his life. Instead, he exhausted all his strength to retreat. He wanted to escape from the battlefield of deities and set foot on the Golden Corridor. As long as he reached the Golden Corridor, it was equivalent to admitting defeat, and he would be protected by the prohibitions of the battlefield of deities. Clang! But at this time, Lin Sun activated the Wuyuan Taoist sword and slashed through the air. The unparalleled sword intent pressed down like a natural moat. "Open!" Nan Tianjing roared, and his spear soared into the sky, releasing endless light. Crack! But under the Wuyuan Taoist sword, the spear was like a piece of paper. It was easily cut in two, and the sword light's momentum didn't diminish. It directly engulfed Nan Tianjing. Boom! The sword chi roared, setting off a monstrous storm. Nan Tianjing, the peak 8th great emperor, was killed and his soul scattered. In the dojo, everyone was dumbfounded. "Tianjing!" Nan Yongqiang's eyes were bloodshot, and he let out a furious roar. His whole body was trembling with anger. Nan Tianjing was only one step away from stepping on the Golden Corridor. But it was this one step that caused Nan Tianjing to die. The Nan family members were dumbfounded. It was as if the pride in their hearts had been shattered. Nan Tianba's death was a heavy blow to them. Now, even Nan Tianjing, whom they had high hopes for, was killed. They couldn't accept this. Clang! Clang! The two halves of the spear fell on the battlefield of deities, and the sound was ear-piercing. Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh. "I still couldn't protect this spear. What a pity. Scrap metal can't be sold for many void origin crystals. You. Nan Yongqiang was so angry that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He couldn't even speak. Chapter 26-23. No matter how angry the powerhouses of the Nan clan were, they couldn't change the fact. A ray of immortal light emerged and swept into Lin Sun's body, becoming the proof of his second consecutive victory. More than half of the hundreds of cultivators in the dojo were from the eternal world, but when they saw this scene, they couldn't help but be shocked and fearful. They finally realized why the Fu clan, an immortal giant from the eighth heaven, would take the initiative to recruit Lin Sun. To be able to leave his name in the top 100 of the Xian ranking, he was by no means comparable to an ordinary peerless figure. Who else wants to come forward to die? On the battlefield of gods, Lin Sun spoke indifferently and glanced at the people of the Nan clan. It was as if he was choosing his prey, and the people of the Nan clan couldn't stand his gaze. You've gone too far. I'll kill you right now. Let me do it. The people of the Nan clan rushed towards the golden tunnel, and they were like fierce beasts with bloodshot eyes. But they were all stopped by Nan Yongqiang. His face was livid, and he said in a deep voice, "Can't you see? That little bastard wants to provoke you and send you to die. It's better to die than to be humiliated by him." The people of the Nan clan had ugly expressions. "You have guts." On the battlefield of gods, Lin Sun raised his thumb, all talk and no action. "Come, come, today I'll send all of you on your way." The people of the Nan clan became more and more angry, but in the end, they were stopped by Nan Yongqiang. Nan Tianba and Nan Tianjing were already dead, and he couldn't tolerate the death of more people. "Old bastard, you're the ancestor of a Dao. You've suffered such a great loss and watched your clansmen die, and you can only be a coward?" Lin Sun looked at Nan Yongqiang with undisguised provocation. It wasn't that he was unforgiving, but as early as in Chaotian City, the 4 clans of the East Emperor, including the Nan clan, had joined forces and clamored to kill him on the battlefield of gods. Under such circumstances, how could Lin Sun be polite? This guy is actually provoking an ancestor of the Emperor realm? On the dojo, the cultivators were in an uproar and were extremely restless. The ancestor of a Dao was like a natural chasm that suppressed the Emperor realm. Even a peerless great emperor would find it difficult to fight against him. Since ancient times, countless extraordinary people had tried to break this natural chasm, but almost all of them had failed. But what did they see now? Lin Sun was provoking the emperor ancestor. If it weren't for the ferocity Lin Sun had shown before, they would have criticized Lin Sun for being too arrogant and crazy. Good, good, good. Nan Yongqiang was furious as he spoke repeatedly, and he seemed like an infuriated primeval ferocious beast, while his expression was ghastly and terrifying. "I originally intended to kill you, but now it would seem like killing you would be letting you off too easily. Perhaps I can only refine your soul core and make you wish you were dead yet unable to live." As he spoke, he stepped onto the golden passageway. "Elder, you must avenge our 2 brothers." The clansmen of the Nan clan cried out in grief and indignation. Whoosh! A figure flashed before Nan Yongqiang appeared on the battlefield. In an instant, a strand of boundlessly terrifying aura of an imperial ancestor surged out violently from his body, and it caused the heavens and the earth to dim while the heavens and the earth trembled. His beard and hair fluttered while his sleeves fluttered, and his emaciated figure was like a mighty god that oppressed the nearby space to the point of exploding. Everyone in the dojo was shocked. In the eternal true world, an imperial ancestor was also a giant who could summon the wind and rain. He looked down upon the Emperor realm, stood above all living beings, and looked up to the mountains and rivers. Except for those immortal figures, the imperial ancestor should be respected. And Nan Yongqiang was by no means an ordinary imperial ancestor. He came from the 7th heaven. Not only was his status noble, but his cultivation was also unfathomable, enough to make any emperor realm feel despair. At least in this battlefield, if Nan Yongqiang defended the ring, almost no one would be stupid enough to fight with him. Nan Yongqiang's appearance did not cause any change in Lin Sun's expression. Everyone thought that the imperial ancestor who had died in his hands over the years was killed by some of his trump card. Unfortunately, what the world thought was not necessarily right. And today, he would tell the world that the natural moat that almost no one could cross since ancient times could also be broken. Clang! A sword sound came from Gu Yongqiang. Immediately afterward, an ancient sword shot out directly from between his eyebrows and turned into a brilliant sword light. Like a swimming dragon, it cut the sky and shattered the sea of clouds. Gu Yongqiang's eyes were cold, like a divine sword that pierced the sky. He didn't waste his breath or delay in the slightest. He stretched out his hand to grab the ancient sword, and then he suddenly slashed down. Crack! The void of 10,000 feet cracked in front of the sword, and a huge crack appeared. The sword light that shot into the sky was like a divine sword that could cut the ninth heaven. It was as if the sky and the earth were all split in front of this sword. As soon as this sword appeared, everyone in the Taoist sanctum looked at each other in horror and turned pale. Strictly speaking, Gu Yongqiang could be called the Sword Ancestor. The Sword Ancestor. How terrifying was this realm on earth! Witnessing the sword that cut through the sky, everyone truly understood the terror of a Sword Ancestor. Compared to him, Nan Tianba and Nan Tianjing from before paled in comparison and seemed very dim. Not to mention anything else, just Gu Yongqiang's first strike was enough to annihilate them. Because this sword strike was like the Milky Way descending from the 9 heavens. It was vast and mighty to the point one couldn't see the end of it, and it was too powerful and terrifying. Good! Lin Sun's eyes shone brightly. Above his head, the abyssal sword cauldron appeared quietly, flowing with billions of rays of light. This was the first time he took out his life emperor weapon since he stepped onto the battlefield of gods. Inside his body, his cultivation was burning like a copper cauldron in a chaotic world. It was running to the extreme and roaring continuously, and the power of his whole body suddenly rose to an unprecedented level. Open! Lin Sun shouted, his black hair fluttering in the wind. In front of Lin Sun, a big abyss suddenly emerged, and the abyssal sword cauldron floated in it, firmly defending Lin Sun. When the sword chi rushed towards Lin Sun, the big abyss roared and swallowed the sword chi like a huge mouth. Then, the great abyss condensed the power of various great ways, and like thousands of indestructible hammers, it scattered the sword chi. The abyssal sword cauldron roared, and the power it released completely obliterated the sword chi that was enough to tear the sky apart, causing it to dissipate into nothingness. This, many spectators widened their eyes. That was the sword ancestor of One Dao's furious sword, which could easily kill any great emperor. But now, in a head-on clash, it had been neutralized by Lin Sun, a peak 8th level great emperor. This was undoubtedly too inconceivable, and it completely overturned everyone's understanding. Humph! Gu Yongqiang coldly harumphed. His finger gently flicked on the ancient sword as if he was playing a pipa. Every time he flicked his finger, a small sword would appear. After 9 consecutive flicks, they turned into 9 flying swords. These 9 flying swords drew 9 long sword rainbows in the void, like the Milky Way across the sky, and rushed to Lin Sun. Whoosh! The space distance seemed to be non-existent in front of the 9 swords. In the blink of an eye, they were already in front of Lin Sun. Boom! The world was turned upside down, and the sun and moon were inverted. 9 streaks of sword light came one after another, making the abyss in front of Lin tremble violently. In the end, the abyss showed signs of collapse. The big abyss was the embodiment of Lin Sun's cultivation. One could imagine how amazing the power of the 9 swords was. Break! At this time, Lin Sun did not dare to neglect and started the abyssal sword cauldron. They launched an attack. Bang! Bang! Dense collisions sounded like thunder. The sword chi crisscrossed and the light shone in the sky. The abyssal sword cauldron buzzed constantly. In a moment, the two had fought hundreds of times. In the end, with a series of explosions, The 9 streaks of sword chi were shattered by Lin Sun with the abyssal sword cauldron one by one and collapsed in the void. In the Taoist field, people could not calm down at all, and their minds were in turmoil. Lin Sun was able to fight with the ancestor of a Tao head-on despite the difference of one realm. This was like a miracle. If it was spread out, it would cause a sensation in the world. After all, in this battle, Lin Sun did not use his trump card, but fought with Gu Yongqiang with his own combat strength and life emperor weapon. The sword crosses the sky, disrupts the universe, and opens the door of life and death with one sword. With a cold voice, Gu Yongqiang suddenly moved. The ancient sword in his hand turned into a more brilliant sword light than before, and shot out again like a dragon soaring in the sky. Crack! The void was split in half by this sword. The terrible space was torn apart, and countless space storms poured out from it. The world was chaotic, and the pneuma was roaring, as if the world was boiling. Clang! Lin Sun resisted with the abyssal sword cauldron, and the power in his body tumbled violently. In the end, he seemed to be unable to bear the power of this sword, and he flew back directly. This sword defeated Lin Sun. Kill him! Kill him! The people of the Nan clan shouted excitedly. Many people could not help but sigh. It was not easy to fight with the ancestor of a Tao head-on. It was very difficult for Lin Sun to break through this natural chasm. After all, he was only an 8th-level emperor. How could he fight with the ancestor of a Tao? However, what no one expected was that, although Lin Sun was pushed back, he was not really suppressed. Instead, as the battle progressed, he became more and more courageous. On the contrary, Gu Yongqiang's expression became gloomy, and he looked very ugly. It seemed that he was embarrassed that he could not kill Lin Sun after so long. 10,000 despair. Northern prison. 9 tribulations. Dark serenity. In an instant, Gu Yongqiang executed 4 ultimate attacks, and it dazzled and shocked everyone present. The battlefield of gods was torn apart by the strands of sword chi, and it transformed into an ocean of chaos. The might of the sword Tao was too terrifying. It was like a raging dragon that swept through the sky, and numerous pillars of sword chi that could support the heavens and the earth roared as they revolved, and they seemed as if they intended to completely slice the sky apart. Break apart. Enveloped by countless strands of sword chi, Lin Sun fought to the extreme. The glow of the Tao rumbled and surged around his body, and he exerted his utmost strength in an unprecedented manner at this moment. In the end, his entire body was like a furnace yet not a furnace, like an abyss yet not an abyss, and he revealed a boundlessly vast and boundlessly powerful aura. The various laws of the great Tao transformed into various unbelievable phenomena that were reflected in the world like tidewater. Especially the abyssal sword cauldron, it emitted clear cries like a tide, and it seemed to have become a part of Lin Sun's body. It accompanied Lin Sun as he controlled his divine energy and fought fiercely in the world. When looked at from afar, he actually crushed and disintegrated the layer upon layer of sword chi, and he forcefully moved against the violent torrent of energy to approach Gu Yongqiang. Chapter 26-24. On the battlefield of gods, it was as if chaos had been reopened. The entire space was torn apart and turned into the center of the storm. Countless spatial fragments swept up. Lin tore apart the void and rushed to Gu Yongqiang while bearing the sword chi. The scene of his peerless courage and slaughter shocked many people to the point that their eyeballs almost fell out. Gu Yongqiang's eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't panic. He raised his sword to block. Clang! The abyssal sword cauldron blasted down. Gu Yongqiang's ancient sword, which was suffused with a trace of immortal aura, couldn't bear Lin's attack. It suddenly buzzed violently, and the sword chi splashed like rain. On the other hand, Gu Yongqiang's figure shook when he suffered such an impact, and he was actually shaken to the point of taking a few steps back in midair. His aged face turned green, and a wisp of seriousness couldn't help but surge between his brows. This kid's cultivation was so strong. On the Taoist sanctum, everyone was stunned at the same time and couldn't believe it. Even a dignified sword ancestor was shaken? It almost made people suspect that they were dreaming. That's it. Gu Yongqiang shook his head slightly, and his eyes surged with a trace of pity. I forgot to tell you that what I displayed just now was just the power of an ordinary emperor ancestor. Now it's the real power of a sword ancestor. After he finished speaking, a wave that was several times stronger than before suddenly surged out from his body. He stood there out of thin air like a heavenly pillar that supported the heaven and earth. The entire space on the battlefield of gods, with Gu Yongqiang as the center, suddenly collapsed and turned into a huge vortex of sword qi. He stood in the center of the vortex like a god. But this was not the end. Gu Yongqiang gently stretched out his hand, and the violently buzzed ancient sword returned to silence. Then, mysterious scrolls emerged from the sword. There was a domineering blow that could kill gods and demons, a stunning flash that penetrated the sun, the moon, and the galaxy, a destructive scene of sword qi that was like a long river that destroyed a large world, and I've stepped into the ancestor realm for 36,000 years, and my cultivation is immersed in the way of killing. In order to refine this sword, I used the immortal matter as a whetstone, and after thousands of years of polishing, its sharpness has accumulated. Today, I'll let you experience the real power of a sword ancestor. Buzz. Gu Yongqiang gently flicked his finger. The ancient sword was originally only a foot long, but now it was 3 feet long. The Tao diagrams on the sword body also fused into a complete sword diagram. 9 streaks of monstrous sword qi transformed into 9 colored streaks of light that flickered within the sword diagram. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, yin and yang. 9 different great Tao ancestor realm sword intents circled around the sword picture, accompanied by the ancient sword's impassioned hum. In the end, the ancient sword and the sword diagram transformed into an illusory 3,000-meter-long sword intent that was grasped by Gu Yongqiang. The terrifying sword intent shot into the sky. Before the sword qi arrived, the sword will had already arrived. The void was suddenly torn apart by the sword intent, and a spatial rift that was thousands of feet long rapidly extended in front of Gu Yongqiang. Everyone felt as if they were witnessing a strange scene. A huge chasm split open in the heavens and earth, and countless sharp sword qi flowed out. Before Gu Yongqiang even drew his sword, he had already split open the space. The defensive prohibition power covering the battlefield of gods roared violently, as if it was touched by this terrifying sword power. At this time, Gu Yongqiang was like the legendary sword god, releasing a majestic sword qi all over his body. The ancient sword clanged. The sword qi pierced through the 9 heavens and 10 earths. When Gu Yongqiang really slashed out with his sword, everyone finally understood how terrifying the power of the sword ancestor was. With this slash, the battlefield of gods seemed to have turned into a cage. Lin Sun's whole body and the space of thousands of feet around him were frozen. Controlling space, Gu Yongqiang's sword was actually the ultimate manifestation of the profound meaning of space. In the past, Gu Yongqiang became an ancestor with the Tao of space, which also caused a sensation in the 7th heaven. It was precisely with the sword intent of space that many of his peers were defeated by this sword. In the Taoist field, an old man couldn't help but sigh. In the 7th heaven, Gu Yongqiang's sword of space simply amazed this world, and many immortal figures regarded him as a hero of the Great Way. If he could embark on the path of immortality one day, his achievements were bound to be even more dazzling. Even those who didn't know Gu Yongqiang's past couldn't help but tremble when they saw this scene at this moment. How could Lin Sun block this sword? Under the gaze of countless people, the big abyss in front of Lin Sun was broken layer by layer under this sword, almost like a clay chicken or pottery dog. The illusory sword qi of space hadn't arrived yet, but the terrifying sword intent had already rushed to Lin Sun. Lin Sun suddenly smiled, which made everyone puzzled. It turns out that you have hidden your strength. Just in time. I have also hidden my strength, Lin Sun said indifferently. Then, the power around Lin Sun rose at an incredible speed, boiling, and a more terrifying power than before suddenly emerged from his body. If Lin Sun could be said to be an invincible overlord in the peak of the 8th realm, with the power to compete with the Emperor Ancestor, then at this moment, the strength he revealed had completely exceeded the limits of this cultivation realm, and it had arrived at an inconceivable state. His entire body seemed to have transformed into an abyss cauldron, and his cultivation seemed to have merged into one, causing the abyssal sword cauldron to rumble and seethe while shining brilliantly with his figure. This was his true battle prowess, and it was also at this moment that he fully displayed all of his skills. Boom! The void suddenly cracked, and the space that was imprisoned like a cage, at this time in front of Lin Sun, at this time, exploded, turning into countless space fragments. Then, the extremely terrifying space sword intent, as soon as it hit Lin Sun's body, made a harsh explosion, as if it had hit an iron plate. Lin Sun's body was like a black hole of the universe, turning into a halo, crushing and devouring all the impact. Finally, under everyone's horrified gaze, Lin Sun struck horizontally with the abyssal sword cauldron, easily smashing the illusory space sword light, exploding into a rain of light, splashing to the 9 heavens. How is this possible? The spectators were not the only ones shocked. Even Gu Yongqiang was shocked, and his expression changed drastically. This sword attack was the perfect manifestation of his power after he became a Tao progenitor, but at that moment, it did not even manage to injure a single hair on Lin Sun's body. This was simply inconceivable. The terrifying power Lin Sun controlled at that moment did not seem like something a peak 8th level great emperor could possess. It was something that had never been seen or heard of in the eternal true world. So what if I can't use my trump card? Over the years, I have personally killed more than one emperor progenitor. Do you really think that I relied on external power to reach where I am today? I might as well be frank with you. In the eternal true world, the natural chasm of progenitors might not be able to be broken. But if I want to, I can crush it with one foot. Lin Sun walked through the air. His entire body was enveloped by the terrifying abyss, and he walked towards Gu Yongqiang. No matter how crazed Gu Yongqiang was and how he slashed out waves of space sword intent, sword auras that filled the sky shone brilliantly and locked down all the dimensions. But they were like shackles and cages that could not withstand a single blow. They were crushed by Lin Sun with each step he took, and when they landed on his body, they were all blocked by the abyssal sword cauldron. All the spectators turned pale with shock. What power was this? How could it appear on a peak 8th level great emperor? At that instant, their inherent knowledge and deeply rooted beliefs were completely overturned. It was simply unimaginable. How could the natural chasm of progenitors be crossed and broken? Gu Yongqiang was also unable to remain calm. His expression was unprecedentedly solemn, and there was a faint hint of rage in it. He used all his power to derive his Tao, and his sword wills intersected with each other to form a shocking spatial sword Tao. The overlapping dimensions were like layers of blooming petals, but also like layers of worlds of sword auras that came crashing down with the force of an avalanche. Each strike could easily kill those great emperors, and it was unimaginably terrifying. But all these attacks were destroyed by Lin Sun. If I didn't want to see just how great you, the sword progenitor from the 7th heaven, are, you wouldn't have been able to live until now. Lin Sun's eyes were cold and his manner was calm. In the past, when he was at the 7th level of the Emperor realm, he was able to fight against Heng Tianxua. At that time, it was just a battle, but he couldn't really kill Heng Tianxua. But in the past 18 years, his Tao had been completely different. Not only did he step into the 8th level of the Emperor realm, but he also had the foundation to suppress and kill the Emperor ancestors in a head-on battle. The natural chasm and the barrier were no longer obstacles for him. It's impossible. Even the top 10 Emperor ancestors of the 7th heaven didn't have such power when they were at the 8th level of the Emperor realm. You! A trace of panic flashed in Gu Yongqiang's eyes. His face was livid and he couldn't even speak. Swish! To everyone's surprise, at this moment, Gu Yongqiang wanted to retreat. But Lin Sun's lips were curved in a mocking smile. The next moment, the 5 Tao forms rushed out and surrounded Gu Yongqiang from all directions, blocking all his retreat. Boom! The 5 Tao forms rushed together like a raging sea. Gu Yongqiang's figure was completely submerged by various Taoism and divine light. This sudden scene was beyond everyone's expectation again, and shocked shouts sounded one after another. Gu Yongqiang roared again and again like a crazy ancient beast. When his figure finally broke out of the encirclement, he was already bathed in blood, his body was broken, and he was in a miserable state. At this moment, Lin Sun appeared out of thin air, and the Wuyuan Tao sword, which had been waiting for a long time, stabbed out at an incredible speed. Puff! This sword transcended the space, and almost pierced the place between Gu Yongqiang's eyebrows as soon as he broke out of the encirclement. Gu Yongqiang was stunned. His eyebrows were directly penetrated, and then his head exploded. Then his whole body, soul, and the terrible power in his body all exploded under this sword, turning into a cloud of blood mist and dissipating between heaven and earth. Lin Sun took a step forward and killed the Emperor ancestor with one sword. It was done casually, without a trace of smoke and fire, as if he was taking something out of his pocket. Before Gu Yongqiang died, he didn't even have time to scream. He was completely erased from the world by the vast sword intent. It was too fast. This bloody scene, like a thunder from the 9th heaven, suddenly exploded in the world, enough to make all living beings in the world tremble. At this moment there was silence in the world. Those onlookers were all stunned. Chapter 26-25. The problem with Nan Yongqiang's surname has been corrected. Thank you for your corrections. The progenitor of one sword, Nan Yongqiang, was dead? All the spectators could not believe it. Regardless of whether it was the nobles from the eternal world or the powerful people from the vast 1,000 worlds, they were all shocked. The might of the sword Dao that Nan Yongqiang had displayed was so powerful and terrifying that it could make anyone below the progenitor realm feel despair. But he had been killed by Lin Sun with a single strike. Did this not mean that Lin Sun's strength had already reached a level where he could suppress the progenitor realm? This thought instantly appeared in the minds of the crowd. Many people were shocked by their own thoughts. The progenitor of one Dao was like a natural chasm. Since ancient times, almost no one had been able to shake him, much less surpass him and kill him. Even the peerless great emperors in the eternal world, who were known as peerless geniuses, might not be able to do this. But Lin Sun had done it. He had broken a natural chasm that had existed since ancient times and created a legendary record. Even if he had died now, this record alone was enough for his name to go down in history and become a legend that would be respected by future generations. At that moment, the members of the Nan clan looked as if they had lost their parents. They could not accept all of this. Nan Tianba was dead, Nan Tianjing was also dead. Now, even the strongest progenitor of their camp, Nan Yongqiang, had died. What else could they use to fight against Lin Sun? An indescribable feeling of grief, anger, and despair spread in the hearts of the members of the Nan clan. Their faces were ashen and their bodies trembled. The entire place was silent. Lin Sun sorted out the spoils of war and held the ancient sword that Nan Yongqiang had left behind in his hand. He could not help but say regretfully, "This sword is extraordinary, but it self-destructed because of its master's death. What a pity!" Even though he said that, he raised his hand and threw the sword into the abyssal sword cauldron. The sword had indeed been destroyed, but it contained wisps of immortal substance. It could also be used as nourishment for the abyssal sword cauldron. Everyone's expressions flickered. When they looked at Lin Sun, their gazes were filled with deep wariness and surprise. At first, when they saw Lin Sun appear in the ruins of the gods, they were in disbelief. They thought that Lin Sun was simply too daring. He was willing to risk his life for a fortuitous encounter. It was no different from courting death. But now they finally understood that everyone was wrong. Lin Sun was not so bold as to act recklessly, but he was fearless. His cultivation was enough to suppress an emperor ancestor, so what was there to be afraid of? In front of the central immortal palace, there were all sorts of rules and restrictions. At the very least, there was no need to worry about being besieged in this arena battle. There was also no need to worry about the enemy using their trump card, because none of this would ever happen, and in the case of one-on-one combat, who would dare to claim that they could defeat Lin Sun? The more they thought about it, the heavier their hearts became. For them, Lin Sun, who had won 3 games in a row, had become a natural moat, blocking their way and making them afraid. The atmosphere was deathly still, terrifyingly quiet. As time passed, no one stepped forward to challenge him. Obviously, they were all frightened by Lin Sun's combat power. If no one challenges me within 15 minutes, then I'll be considered to have successfully defended the ring, and I can directly enter the second stage. On the battlefield of the gods, Lin Sun had his hands behind his back as he spoke indifferently, and his gaze swept the clansmen of the Nan clan incessantly. However, even though the expressions of these clansmen were filled with resentment and hatred, none of them dared to look Lin Sun in the eye. On the other hand, the other cultivators present here had various expressions as well, and they glanced at each other. No one was willing to challenge Lin Sun at this moment. Even some emperor ancestors chose to wait and see for now. 15 minutes were almost up, but Lin Sun, who was on the battlefield of the gods, suddenly walked toward the golden pathway. In an instant, the 3 immortal energy certificates he'd obtained during his 3 consecutive victories left his body and vanished from the battlefield of the god. Why did this fellow admit defeat? Everyone was stunned, and they almost thought they were seeing things. However, Lin Sun grinned and said, "In any case, we have 7 days of time. If any of you want to ascend to the battlefield of the gods and defend the ring, feel free to do so. As for me, I'll wait for a while." Wait? Everyone seemed to have vaguely understood, and many even gasped while they looked at the clansmen of the Nan clan with pity in their eyes. Lin Sun's actions obviously showed that he didn't intend to let off a single member of the Nan clan. Indeed, the members of the Nan clan didn't have the courage to fight Lin Sun again, but as long as they dared to ascend to the battlefield of the gods and abandon Lin Sun, who was defending the arena, they were bound to challenge him at the first possible moment and start a slaughter. The duration of the arena defense battle was only 7 days. Even if the members of the Nan clan could restrain themselves from fighting, once the 7 days were up, how would they have the chance to enter the second stage? This also meant that they had no fate with the fortune of the Central Immortal Court. This was why Lin Sun chose to stay. "Lin Sun, you're going too far." Those clansmen of the Nan clan had obviously recovered from their shock. All of them were infuriated to the point their eyes almost split apart, and they were unable to restrain their rage. They wished for nothing more than to skin Lin Sun alive. Lin Sun said with a smile, "Sorry, I just want to bully you. I want you to either die or be eliminated. If I can kill all of you, it will be better." Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. Although the members of the Nan family are in a difficult situation at the moment, they are still one of the 4 major families of the 7th heaven. By doing so, Lin Sun obviously didn't take the threat of Nan seriously at all. "Fellow Taoist Lin, then shall we ascend the arena?" Someone couldn't help but speak out and ask probingly. "Everyone, please do as you please. I naturally won't make things difficult for those that have no enmity with me," said Lin Sun casually. This caused many people to heave a sigh of relief in their hearts. But there were also some whose expressions were unsightly because they'd taken pleasure in Lin Sun's misfortune, and it was even to the extent that they intended to watch Lin Sun make a fool of himself. They were very unsure if Lin Sun had taken this as an act of hostility. No matter what, after those cultivators that weren't hostile to Lin Sun obtained Lin Sun's guarantee, all of them fought to start the arena defense battle. The battle was extremely intense, and it was even to the extent that bloody conflicts erupted and casualties appeared. Lin Sun didn't care about this, and he just stood there and watched in a carefree manner. Along with the passage of time, the expressions of those clansmen of the Nan clan gradually became unsightly. How could they be unable to discern that Lin Sun was determined to deal with them? In next to no time, 1 day passed, 2 days passed. During this period of time, there were ceaselessly people that obtained 9 successive victories. In the end, they obtained a message talisman, and then they were carried away by the restrictions that covered the battlefield of the gods and vanished. But even more people suffered crushing defeats, and there were even some that were killed on the battlefield. When he witnessed all of this, Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh with emotion in his heart. Perhaps the ruins of the gods didn't contain any extremely dangerous tribulations, but merely the arena defense battle was sufficient to cause numerous casualties amongst the cultivators that participated in the competition. This was just one of the sites, and similar situations were bound to occur ceaselessly in the other 48 sites. Actually, Lin Sun had noticed as well. Even though there were many cultivators that participated in the competition, ancestors of the Tao were extremely few in number after all. Peak 8th level imperial emperors could be considered as heavyweight existences, and their numbers were very few as well. The true main force was those 7th level peak imperial emperors and a group of extremely senior 9th level ancestral ancestors. If he wasn't targeted by the Nan clan, then with Lin Sun's combat strength, it wouldn't be difficult for him to succeed in defending the arena defense battle. Of course, this arena defense battle could be said to be dangerous and brutal to the others. Up until 6 days later. Under Lin Sun's attention, there were only 50-plus cultivators amongst the almost 700 cultivators that obtained 9 successive victories in the end, and they smoothly left the battlefield of the gods and entered the second test. This elimination rate was undoubtedly shockingly high. Lin Sun calculated for a moment. If every site had 70 people that rose above the rest during these 7 days of competition, then the number of cultivators that were eliminated would be 10 times this number. Up until the 7th day arrived. Amongst the 7 stars that flickered in the sky above the battlefield of the gods, only one remained bright, and the other 6 were dim and lusterless. But Lin Sun didn't make a move, and he kept waiting. He'd already observed that it took a total of 24 hours for a star to dim from bright to dim, or in other words, a day. If those clansmen of the Nan clan still didn't make a move, then he would make a move during the last 2 hours. In this way, so long as they persisted for 15 minutes in the battlefield of the gods, they would be able to advance directly. At that time, even if those clansmen of the Nan clan ascended the battlefield of the gods, they probably wouldn't have much time left. After all, once 7 days passed, the battle of the gods would come to an end. Time flowed by bit by bit. These 7 days of time were simply like extraordinary torture to those clansmen of the Nan clan, and it caused their mental states to suffer boundless torture. There were many times when they wished for nothing more than to charge into the battlefield of the gods, and they wanted to fight Lin Sun even if they died. But in the end, they didn't dare do that. Because if they did that, then it would really be no different than giving their lives away. When they saw the curtains to the 7 days were about to be drawn, those clansmen of the Nan clan couldn't help but feel despair, and they felt oppressed as if they were about to collapse. Right at this moment, Lin Sun made a move. After a cultivator that obtained 9 successive victories left, he directly ascended the battlefield of the gods. In an instant, the surroundings were deathly silent. All the experts sighed helplessly, and they abandoned their thoughts of charging forward at the last moment. It couldn't be helped. With Lin Sun obstructing their path, charging forward would be no different than giving their lives away. Lin Sun, the eternal figures of my clan are holding down the fort outside the ruins of the gods. Even if you're able to walk out alive in the end, you'll definitely die. At this last moment, a clansman of the Nan clan couldn't restrain the depression and rage in his heart any longer, and he roared resentfully. Many people's gazes changed subtly. To Lin Sun, this was indeed a serious and fatal threat. If I can come in alive, then I can leave alive. But you guys, haha, you've completely lost the face of your Nan clan. Lin Sun laughed to himself. This matter was bound to be unable to be kept a secret, and it would definitely spread out. At that time, the entire eternal world would probably know how distressed and pathetic the clansmen of the Nan clan were. Buzz soon, 15 minutes passed. Lin Sun, who was unchallenged, directly obtained a message talisman, and he was enveloped by the restrictive power of the battlefield of the gods and disappeared. As they watched him leave, all the experts let out a long sigh. There was only one star left in the sky, and it also completely dimmed. The first stage of the Battle of the Arena came to an end, just like that. P.S. The Goldfish Man is in Luoyang. If there's no second update at around 9 p.m., don't wait. He'll make it up when you get home. Chapter 26:26. Lin Sun's figure appeared on an immortal platform. The surroundings were boundless, filled with mist that was as white as the rosy clouds. It wasn't long before a strand of immortal tune resounded out. A beautiful and brilliant scroll seemed to have surged into appearance from within the mist, and it unfolded while countless obscure and mysterious auras of inheritance surged out from it. Origin Dao Canon. Lin was shocked. Was the rumor true? Before entering the gods' ruins, he'd heard that in the last era's Heaven's Chosen battle, those who obtained 9 consecutive victories in the arena would receive a reward. The reward for this round came from the Central Immortal Court's Origin Dao Canon. According to rumor, this was the general outline of the inheritances of the immortal world, and it converged the 3,000 supreme and formidable Dao art inheritances of the immortal world from the ancient times until now. It was said to be the source of all the techniques in the immortal world. In the last era, the Central Immortal Court was the supreme existence that controlled the myriad of worlds, and the Taoist scripture of origins that was compiled by them was viewed as the number one scripture in the entire immortal world. But this was just a rumor after all. Lin Sun didn't expect that the last era had been destroyed for so many years, but the Origin Tao book still existed. Lin Sun took a deep breath and calmed his mind. The 9 essences immortal control magic can open up 9 great immortal essences, and the Tao can contain 9 palaces. It can manifest the wonders of yin and yang, the pure and turbid. When cultivated to the pinnacle, one can form a 9-fold immortal root, allowing the cultivator to wield 9-fold Tao power. The Heavenly Divination Book of Stars is capable of controlling the energy of the stars in the universe and refining the stars into a quintessence book. It's also called the Book of Stars, and it's capable of suppressing a universe. The Chaotic World Immortal Demon Sutra is like an immortal, yet not an immortal, like a devil, yet not a devil. It fuses the immortal chi and refines the body of a devil. Once you use it, you will be able to wield the power of chaos, trample the heavens and earth, and defy all laws and principles. Tao of world monarchs, all kinds of supreme inheritances belonging to immortals surged into Lin Sun's heart like a tide. Hundreds and thousands of them flickered constantly. At this moment, Lin Sun realized that as long as he made a choice and occupied one of the inherited powers with his spiritual awareness, the reward would be over. However, this was a difficult decision to make. It wasn't that the supreme inheritances of the last era weren't powerful enough. On the contrary, each of them had extremely unique and wonderful effects, so Lin Sun didn't know what to choose. After a moment of silence, his eyes gradually became clear and calm. With my current cultivation, I don't lack any inheritance at all. Even if I don't have this reward, it won't affect my cultivation at all. So, what do I need the most right now? Lin Sun's state of mind became as calm as snow. He was no longer affected by the temptations of all kinds of inheritance and began to examine his own path. After a long time, he made a decision. It was as if he'd seen through a form of karma and allowed his mind to transcend the cage. Along with a flash of his divine sense, it descended onto the scroll formed from the Genesis Tao scripture. His state of mind had no desires, so he decided to leave it to fate, but at this moment, a strange buzzing sound emerged, and a jade archive as white as snow appeared in front of Lin Sun. Immediately afterwards, all sorts of profound and unfathomable immortal Tao laws spread out, circulating with a magnificent rain of light. This was like a fatal temptation. Lin Sun didn't need to make a choice at all, nor did the jade disk of fate take the initiative to attack. The scroll-like Genesis Tao scripture seemed to feel some kind of call and trembled. The next moment, the innumerable power of inheritance in the Genesis Tao scripture turned into rays of light, separated from the scroll, and flew into the arms of the jade disk of fate. Lin Sun was stunned at once, and a look of disbelief appeared on his face. After a long time, he vaguely understood that the jade disk of fate was said to contain the supreme power of the immortal Tao, and it maintained the operation of the rules of the entire 4,900 continents in the immortal world. The Genesis Tao scripture was known as the first supreme Tao scripture in the immortal world, and it included all kinds of immortal Tao inheritances. But if there was no Tao as the source of the inheritance, it was rootless after all, like duckweed floating on the water. Perhaps it could be comprehended and controlled, but it was no longer the orthodox source. For example, if Lin Sun chose one of the inheritances to cultivate, he would only be able to comprehend its mysteries and integrate it into the Tao he controlled for use. As for the immortal Tao that matched this inheritance, it was bound to be impossible for him to control it. But the existence of the jade disk of fate could undoubtedly solve the problem of the core of the entire Genesis Tao scripture, because the jade disk contained the complete power of the Tao of the immortal Tao. Any inheritance in the Genesis Tao scripture could obtain the corresponding profundity of the Tao from the jade disk of fate. In short, the jade disk of fate was the source of the Tao of origin. Thinking of this, Lin Sun finally understood why the Genesis Tao scripture would so easily throw itself into the arms of the jade disk of fate. Doesn't this mean that the reward for defending the arena this time allows me to obtain the entire Genesis Tao scripture? Lin Sun's eyes became strange. This was really, as the saying went, unintentionally planting a willow tree, but it became a shade. Not long after, the jade disk of fate turned into a ray of white light and flashed into Lin Sun's body. Fortunately, this was the last moment before the battle of defending the arena came to an end. The practitioners who had already advanced in these 7 days had already obtained the reward and entered the second level, the Great Hunt. Otherwise, if someone succeeded in defending the arena again, he might not get the reward from the Genesis Tao scripture. Whoosh! Soon, a divine rainbow fell from the sky and fell on Lin Sun, who was standing on the platform. The next moment, his figure disappeared from the platform. Outside the god's relic, many terrifying figures whose cultivation had long surpassed the scope of the ancestor realm had been waiting here for 7 days. When the curtains to the combat arena were drawn, the figures of numerous eliminated cultivators were forcefully teleported out from the rift that led to the outside world. So many people were eliminated? Someone was surprised. There were about 30,000 practitioners who entered the god's relic this time. But now, more than half of them were eliminated. Less than 1 in 10 survived. It seems that the rumor is true. The battle of defending the arena in the last era is really cruel, someone murmured with a trace of emotion. This is merely the first level. I'm afraid many have died in the battle of defending the arena. In contrast, the second level, the great hunt, is even more bloody and cruel, someone frowned. The god's relic was related to the Battle of the Chosen One that was held every 100,000 years by the Central Immortal Court in the last era. According to the rumor, the Battle of the Chosen One was the cruelest selection battle of the last era. What? Suddenly, a mighty figure bathed in a myriad of rays of Taoist light spoke angrily. This was a middle-aged man with a graceful temperament and a fluttering willow beard. His whole body was surrounded by strands of immortal laws, and his power was like the sky. Nan Faidu, an immortal existence of the Nan clan. At this moment, all the clansmen of the Nan clan lowered their heads and kept quiet out of fear. Their expressions were full of depression and bitterness. Earlier, they had told him everything that had happened in the battle of defending the arena, and they didn't dare to conceal anything. When Nan Faidu heard this bad news, it was like a bolt from the blue. The deaths of Nan Yongqiang, Nan Tianjing, and Nan Tianba made him sad, and the fact that the entire Nan clan had been eliminated made him completely furious. Lin Sun had actually ruined the operation of the Nan clan to obtain the supreme treasure. The most humiliating thing was that the Nan clan had lost all their face in the battle of defending the arena, and this news was bound to be impossible to conceal. As expected, a burst of discussion arose in the nearby area, and all of it was related to the elimination of all the cultivators of the Nan clan by Lin Sun alone. Nan Faidu's face turned ashen as he could no longer hold it in. "Brother Faidu, don't be angry because of this. No matter how fierce Lin Sun is, he will definitely die this time." In the distance, a woman in a golden robe with a snow-white flying sword floating between her fingers spoke. Her figure was extremely tall and curvaceous. Her black hair was coiled into a bun, revealing an extremely gorgeous face. Strands of the eternal law of life emanated from her body, making her seem like a legendary sword goddess. Moreover, she was a peerlessly beautiful sword goddess. Gu Lingjun, an immortal figure of the Gu clan, was also an extremely famous and terrifying existence in the seventh heaven. Humph! Nan Faidu's face was gloomy. It was easy to say, but it was not the Gu clan that had lost its face. But he also knew that what had happened couldn't be remedied. He could only continue to wait until everything was over, and then he would have the opportunity to kill Lin Sun. Of course, the premise was that Lin Sun didn't die in the Battle of the Chosen One. The second level, the Great Hunt, will take place in the Great Void Immortal Realm. Those who have successfully defended the arena will carry out a different kind of hunting. Everyone is a hunter, and everyone is a prey. A gray-robed old man riding on the back of a green grasshopper approached. The Great Hunt will last for 3 days. Only those who survive will have the opportunity to enter the third level, the Ascendant. In this kind of battle, Lin Sun may not be able to survive. The old man looked like an immortal, holding a lavender jade ruler, with a leisurely manner. The green grasshopper he sat on shook its head, looking quiet and docile. Li Shangjuan, an immortal figure of the Li clan. This boy is only at the peak of the 8th level of the Emperor realm, but he can kill an Emperor ancestor with his own combat power. How can a great hunt hurt his life? Nan Faidu's face was gloomy. "You don't have to comfort me. There is no doubt that this little guy's combat power is heaven-defying and terrifying. But I have to remind you, you have to be prepared. My Nan clan has fallen, those in your clans. If they encounter any danger..." Before he could finish his words, the beautiful Gu Lingjun and the sage-like Li Shangjuan could not help but frown. This old thing, his own clan had suffered heavy losses, yet he dared to say such harsh words to them. "Everyone, don't let others laugh at us. Don't forget that the purpose of our trip is not just for the opportunity here. In my opinion, no matter how many accidents happen, as long as we capture Lin Sun, all the losses, all the efforts will be worth it." Suddenly, a gray-haired, skinny figure of a young man walked over, stepping on a blood-stained scabbard, with a fierce and terrifying aura. Yun Jiwei, an immortal figure of the Yun clan. A terrifying figure, whether it was cultivation or prestige, above Nan Faidu, Gu Lingzhen, or Li Shangjuan. P.S. Goldfish just got home and is very tired, but she will not stop updating today. The second chapter is a little late. Chapter 26-27. Yun Jiwei's words made everyone silent. The supreme treasure in the relics of the gods might be tempting, but the reason why these immortal figures appeared here was not just for this. In the final analysis, they had only one goal: Lin Sun, the successor of Mountain of Mind and Heart, who won the chance of nirvana, of freedom. As long as they could capture him, everything else was secondary. Taishu Immortal Realm. In the depths of a vast mountain range that rose and fell like a coiling dragon, the immortal mist lingered and the field was empty. Strong immortal spirit pervaded the air between heaven and earth, but there were no living creatures or spiritual herbs between the mountains and rivers. It gave people the feeling of a dead world relic. Clang! An extremely ear-piercing sound of collision suddenly broke the silence of this mountain range. After that, boundless divine radiance charged out and shot into the sky, causing numerous mountains in the vicinity to rumble as they collapsed and transformed into powder. Moreover, space was like a shattered canvas that was torn apart by the violent fluctuations of the battle. Clatter! A handful of blood rain splashed, which was shocking. Lin Sun raised his sword and cut a burly and majestic man in black armor into two halves. The overbearing torrent of sword chi completely drowned the man's spirit that had just escaped and crushed it in an instant. With a long breath, Lin Sun waved his sleeve and put away the spoils left by the man. Then he turned into a stream of light and disappeared in this vast mountain range. The third one. Lin Sun turned his hand, and a talisman condensed by immortal light emerged. On the surface of the talisman, there were 3 bloody marks, bright red like burning. This meant that the burly man killed by him just now was his 3rd battle achievement. At this time, it was the 12th hour since Lin Sun entered the Tai Immortal Realm for the Great Hunt. He had begun to familiarize himself with the rules of the Great Hunt. Here, everyone was a hunter and everyone was a prey. It depended on who could survive in the end, and who would become the prey of others. This was the Great Hunt. It lasted for 3 days. The more prey hunted, the higher the battle achievement. At the end of the 2nd level, the higher the battle achievement, the richer the reward. According to Lin Sun's understanding, in the Battle of the Chosen One in the last era, the Great Hunt was the bloodiest and cruelest. All the figures that were capable of entering the Grand Unity Immortal Realm were ferocious fellows that had experienced the battles to defend the arena and obtained 9 successive victories. Every single one of them possessed terrifying cultivation, and they were vigilant and experienced. No matter if it was their disposition, will, combat technique, or experience, they far surpassed the masses and were extremely terrifying. Among the 3 opponents that Lin Sun had killed before, 2 of them were at the peak 8th stage and one of them was the ancestor of One Dao. All of them were extremely powerful and peerless figures. In the vast 1,000 battle domain, they were all top characters. The most frightening thing was that in the Grand Immortal Realm, one was allowed to borrow external forces. This also meant that the more trump cards each character who participated in the hunt had, the more dangerous and fatal it would be. When Lin Sun killed the 2nd opponent, he was caught unprepared by his opponent's trump card, which caused him a lot of injuries. If he hadn't stopped the power of his opponent's trump card in the first place with the forbidden death magic, he might have been seriously injured and killed. The Great Hunt only lasts for 3 days. Once I am injured, even if it is only a minor injury, if I can't recover in a short time, it will be fatal. Lin Sun was very clear that even if it was the ancestor of One Dao, once he was injured, it would affect his combat power. Once he was targeted by the opponent, he was doomed to be doomed eternally. If I can avoid fighting recklessly, it is naturally the safest way. Lin Sun realized that if he wanted to survive in these 3 days, he had to keep a low profile. He was not afraid of killing, but he had to be afraid of the trump cards in the hands of the enemy. It was even to the extent that he didn't doubt at all that any figure capable of slaughtering their way into the grand hunt would definitely possess some heaven-defying trump cards. For example, in the previous battle, Lin Sun had collected 6 kinds of trump cards that contained taboo power from Nan Yongqiang, Nan Tianjing, and Nan Tianba. 3 of them were secret treasures that contained the power of immortal will. Once they were displayed, even if they couldn't compare with the real immortal figures, their lethality was enough to seriously threaten the life of the ancestor of one Dao. Similarly, they would also pose a serious threat to Lin Sun. Unfortunately, the power of immortal will contained in these 3 secret treasures was left by an immortal figure of the Nan clan. It needed the power of the bloodline of the Nan clan to control it. Outsiders couldn't use it at all. But the other 3 treasures aroused Lin Sun's interest. A sky-shifting seal was a sharp weapon for escape. Once it was displayed, even if one was trapped in a heavy siege, he could instantly teleport thousands of miles away. Through Lin Sun's senses, this sky-shifting seal contained wisps of the aura of space order, which was extremely magical. The other 2 items were a jade talisman and a rusty blade. The jade talisman was branded with the totem of the myriad transformation spear. Its aura was obscure and frightening. As long as it was crushed, one could release a killing move belonging to the myriad transformation spear. Although it couldn't compare with the power of the real myriad transformation spear, if it was suddenly displayed, it could also pose a fatal threat to one Tao ancestor. The rusty blade glowed with a faintly discernible immortal aura. Obviously, it was a fragment of an immortal Tao weapon. According to Lin Sun's estimation, if this treasure and the jade talisman branded with the totem of the myriad transformation spear were fully activated, the power would only be stronger. It could be imagined that if the trump card was allowed to be used in the arena battle, Lin Sun would have to pay a price even if he wanted to kill Nan Yongqiang and the others. However, Lin Sun also knew that in the Great Hunt, no one would use the trump card without authorization unless it was a matter of life and death. Because this kind of trump card could almost only be used once, and the number of each person's hands was extremely limited. Using it once was equivalent to losing a life-saving trump card. Once it was used up, there would be nothing to rely on anymore. Of course, Lin Sun didn't lack trump cards. For example, he still had 3 wisps of the extinguishing fire of order. In addition, he still had the supernatural power of forbidden death, the 5 Tao bodies, and so on. While flying in the void, Lin Sun suddenly noticed that several extremely obscure and hidden aura fluctuations emerged in the distance. If he hadn't used the third eye, he would hardly have sensed it with his divine awareness. There were enemies hiding ahead. And there were more than one. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and immediately turned away. It had only been 6 hours since he entered the Great Void Immortal Realm, but he had met many opponents along the way. Almost all of them came in groups. Obviously, they were practitioners from the same force. In such a situation, Lin Sun often just left. It was not dangerous to be besieged, but once a fight broke out, more and more opponents would be attracted by the fluctuations of the battle if he couldn't get rid of his opponent in a short time. This was the reason why Lin Sun was afraid. For example, the group of hidden opponents he found at this moment was obviously from the same force. Lin Sun seems to have found us in advance. As soon as Lin Sun left, the black-robed man hiding in the dark couldn't help but frown and say, "Elder, shall we chase him?" Beside him sat a graceful and charming beautiful woman wearing a light gauze. Her face was as delicate and lustrous as a young girl, her skin was as smooth as cream, and her eyes were like autumn water. Her every move was full of charm. In particular, the towering and plump chest was half covered, revealing a large area of snow-white, trembling and shining with attractive luster. She was born to be charming and beautiful. It was Gu Banzwang, the emperor ancestor of the Gu clan. I have fixed my eyes on his breath. No matter where he escapes, I can find him as soon as possible. Gu Banzwang gently tucked her hair behind her ear. Her casual movement had a natural charm to it, causing the nearby Gu clan members to feel a rush of heat in their hearts. They hurriedly lowered their heads and cried for their lives in their hearts. The Tao that Gu Banzwang sought was related to the art of charm. The higher the cultivation, the stronger the power of charm. In the seventh heaven, there was once an emperor ancestor of the Buddha clan who was known to have a heart as hard as iron and a body as solid as a rock. However, after meeting Gu Banzwang, he was so fascinated that he almost lost his mind. It was conceivable how amazing Gu Banzwang's charm was. "You little bastards, I have restrained my cultivation, but your state of mind is still so impetuous. You really lack tempering." Gu Banzwang glanced at the clansmen of the Gu clan. Immediately, her expression changed and she said, "A few days ago, some strong people who had fought with Lin Sun in the arena battle spread the news that Lin Sun's combat power is incomparable. In a place like the battlefield of the gods, he could kill Nan Yongqiang by relying on his own combat power. Although I am confident that I can deal with this boy, it is better to be safe than sorry. Since we want to deal with him, we can't just mobilize the power of our Gu clan." When she spoke up to hear, she lightly bit her moist and alluring red lips while her starry eyes glowed, and she said, "So I've decided to ask the Yun clan and Li clan to act with us. What do all of you think? Isn't this making a mountain out of a molehill? Even if Lin Sun's combat strength is incomparably heaven-defying, we have many trump cards in our possession that are sufficient to annihilate an emperor ancestor. So why would we be afraid of Lin Sun?" Someone hesitated. Gu Banzwang laughed with ridicule while the pair of snow-white and plump breasts on her chest surged, and it shook the hearts of those clansmen to the point they almost flew out of their chests and hurriedly moved their gazes away. "We have a trump card, but doesn't Lin Sun have one? Don't forget that he's the inheritor of Fang Siyuan and was capable of traversing all the way to the 49 barriers of the immortal realm. How could he be so easy to deal with? The Nan clan has already fallen, and I don't want our Gu clan to follow the same path." As she finished speaking, a wisp of a solemn expression suffused the space between Gu Banzwang's brows. All the information and facts proved that they absolutely couldn't be careless when dealing with Lin Sun, nor could they underestimate the strength Lin Sun possessed in the slightest. Otherwise, the painful lesson of the Nan clan was a lesson to be learned from. At this point, those clansmen of the Gu clan didn't voice any more objections. On the other hand, Gu Banzwang took action at the first possible moment. Her fair and slender fingers lightly clenched together, and then she crushed a communication talisman used to send messages. Swoosh! A ray of light condensed from the glow of the Grand Tao suddenly shot into the sky, and then it exploded like fireworks. It transformed into numerous rays of light that vanished in all directions. P.S. I'll start making up for the last chapter tomorrow. Chapter 26-28. The Tai immortal realm was so vast that it was no different from a large world. After the first battle, there were less than 1/10 of the practitioners who entered the Tai immortal realm from the 49 battlefield of God. There were only about 2,000 people. Perhaps the number was not spectacular, but these were all existences who had won 9 consecutive victories on the battlefield of gods. All of them could be called giants and overlords on the road to the Emperor realm. Some existences in the Emperor Ancestor realm were as transcendent as gods. It could be said that among these 2,000 practitioners, the lowest cultivation was at the peak of the 7th level of the Emperor realm. Of course, being able to win 9 consecutive victories with the cultivation of the peak of the 7th level of the Emperor realm meant that their combat power was bound to be incomparably heaven-defying and abnormal. Therefore, in this great hunt, not only Lin Sun became extremely vigilant and cautious, but also those arrogant and domineering characters in the outside world became low-key and tolerant. This undoubtedly made the atmosphere of the entire Tai immortal realm more oppressive and dangerous. At this time, after releasing the messaging talisman, Gu Banzwang and the others only waited for less than a quarter of an hour. Under the distant sky, dazzling and blazing escape lights appeared one after another. These escape lights moved through the void at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, they had already arrived at the mountain area where Gu Banzwang and the others were hiding. Then, two groups of figures appeared. They were the experts from the Li clan and the Yun clan. There were more than 30 people gathered together. If Gu Banzwang and the others were included, the number alone had reached nearly 50. In the Tai immortal realm, it was definitely a terrible lineup that could make any strong practitioner flee. It's just to deal with Lin Sun. Do you need us 3 emperor clans to act together? A man in black, who was the leader of the Li clan, said. He stood straight like a spear, his face was like a jade crown, and his eyes were like the beginning of chaos, flowing with clear and turbid air, which was extremely terrifying. On his back was a huge axe that was 2 meters long. It was completely black, and its blade was dazzling and bright. Li Henshui, the emperor ancestor of the Li clan. In terms of combat power, he was above Nan Yongqiang and Gu Banzwang. Gu Banzwang pursed her lips and smiled. Her eyes were charming, and her fair body exuded a fatal charm. Brother Henshui, Nan Yongqiang and others have all been killed. You are powerful and don't be afraid of Lin Sun, but I am afraid of him. I have no choice but to ask you and Brother Luohong for help. Her sweet voice drifted through the air like a devilish tune that plucked at the heartstrings, and it caused the auras of those cultivators that had just arrived here to roil while their vital blood heated up and their mouths went dry. This woman was simply a source of calamity. Only one person remained unmoved. That was Yun Luohong, who Gu Banzwang had addressed as Brother Luohong. He was the leader of the Yun clan and was also an emperor ancestor. His clothes were whiter than snow, his figure was imposing and robust, his eyes were icy cold, and his entire body was coiled with a sharp aura that caused one's heart to tremble. He was like a divine sword that pierced through the sky and looked down proudly upon the 9 heavens. Where is he? Yun Luohong didn't waste his breath and asked directly. His voice was sonorous like the howl of a sword, and it seemed capable of tearing apart one's eardrums and mind. Don't you want to discuss countermeasures? Gu Banzwang blinked her watery eyes. Our 3 great clans combined are enough to sweep through the entire Tai immortal realm. What strategy do we need? Just crush them, Li Henshui, who carried a giant axe and was dressed in black, said with a smile. His words were full of confidence and disdain. Although Yun Luohong didn't speak, his expression was cold and indifferent, without any fluctuation. Obviously, he didn't object to Li Henshui's suggestion. Gu Banzwang thought for a moment, then revealed a smile that could captivate all living things, and said, "Then, I'll listen to you. Come with me." As she spoke, she led the way. Watching her charming, slender, and graceful figure go away, many people's throats and eyes went dry, and they secretly swallowed their saliva. It was just a figure, but it was full of charm that made one's imagination run wild. The lineup of Gu Banzwang, Li Henshui, and Yun Luohong was mighty and extremely shocking, and it couldn't be concealed at all. Not long after they started moving, they alarmed some cultivators along the way and attracted their attention. The forces of 3 of the 4 clans of the East Emperor have gathered together. Are they going to deal with Lin Sun? Some people hid far away, their hearts trembling. They're definitely going to deal with Lin Sun. Only such a peerless and ruthless person can make the 3 great immortal emperor clans mobilize such a large force. If they were dealing with an ordinary person, there would be no need to do so. It seems that the crushing defeat of the Nan clan has sounded the alarm, and the 3 great immortal emperor clans don't dare to be negligent. Speaking of which, that Lin Sun is really terrifying. He's just one person, but he killed the Nan clan on the battlefield of the gods until they could only lower their heads. All sorts of voices sounded, but no one dared to stay. After sensing the movements of the three great immortal emperor clans, they immediately retreated far away, not daring to get close for fear of being implicated. It should be known that this was the Tai immortal realm, and everyone was prey. If they were killed by the three great immortal emperor clans, then their deaths would be too worthless. And as these cultivators left, they also spread the news, like a storm that swept through the Tai immortal realm. Along with the crushing defeat of the Nan clan, Lin Sun's strength had long been deeply rooted in everyone's hearts. Everyone knew that he was an extremely dangerous opponent, and could not be judged by common sense. And the power of the three great immortal emperor clans, the Li clan, the Yun clan, and the Gu clan, was also not to be trifled with. If they joined forces, they could sweep through the Tai immortal realm, and make people flee at the mere sight of them. Now, between Lin Sun and the three great immortal emperor clans, a killing calamity would erupt, and it would be difficult not to attract attention. In the Tai immortal realm, every cultivator's movements were not fixed. In other words, if one wanted to survive in the Tai immortal realm, almost no one dared to stay in one place for too long. Because no matter how powerful the concealment method was, it would still be detected by opponents who had mastered mysterious technique. At that time, it would be obviously too late to leave. Lin Sun was no exception. Previously, after sensing that Gu Banzwang and the others were hiding, he immediately left. His figure flickered, and he restrained his aura, moving stealthily between the boundless mountains and rivers. Not only was he avoiding some possible killing calamity, but he was also searching for prey. Soon, Lin Sun suddenly stopped in the void, and his eyes looked towards the waist of a steep mountain several thousand zhang away. There was a waterfall, a spring, and an old pine tree, but there was no one there. But in Lin Sun's eyes, he saw a figure standing on the old pine tree. When Lin Sun looked over, the figure also raised his head, and looked at him from afar. Then, he smiled and said, "Brother Lin, we meet again." This person was dressed in white, and his black hair fluttered in the wind. He had a wild bearing, and there was a 7-inch golden coffin floating above his head. It was Tsang Fuxing. He was a peerless, ruthless person who had been on the wanted list for 18,000 years before Lin Sun entered the vast thousand-battle domain. He stood under the pine tree with his hands behind his back, and his body was filled with an oppressive loneliness. His arrogance was filled with a domineering air. "You want to fight?" Lin Sun asked. Tsang Fuxing shook his head and said, "If you want to fight, then there's no need to talk nonsense. I just want to remind Brother Lin that a killing calamity has come for you. It's said that the experts of the Li clan, Yun clan, and Gu clan have joined forces, and are looking for your traces in this Tai celestial realm." Lin Sun raised his eyebrows, and he couldn't understand what Tsang Fuxing meant. Tsang Fuxing sighed and said, "I just can't bear for someone like you to die in this god's relic. I only hope that you can survive this killing calamity. Goodbye." After saying that, he turned around and left. It seemed that he really just came to remind Lin Sun. Lin Sun thought for a while and said, "Thank you." Tsang Fuxing waved his hand without turning his head and said, "In this Tai celestial realm, there's no lack of people more terrifying than the 4 Eastern Imperial clans. Brother Lin, you need to be careful." After saying that, his figure had already disappeared into the horizon. People more terrifying than the 4 Eastern Imperial clans. Lin Sun's black eyes slightly narrowed. There was a huge number of cultivators participating in the god's relic this time. Before Lin Sun came, he only remembered those forces that were hostile to him. Apart from that, he really didn't know how many powerful characters were participating in the god's ruins and who they were. At this moment, Tsang Fuxing's reminder also made Lin Sun start to face this problem seriously. One should know that Tsang Fuxing was once a ruthless character ranked first on the wanted list. After arriving at Chaotian City, his name was even left on the domain battle stele. To be able to get such a peerless figure to remind him, One could imagine that there were definitely some terrifying opponents in the Tai immortal realm that he had overlooked. However, Lin Sun was not in the mood to think about it now. He was thinking about the killing tribulation that Song Fu Xing mentioned. The Li clan, the Gu clan, and the Yun clan had joined hands? Looks like the miserable defeat of the Nan clan has already caused them to arouse vigilance, and they've taken me to be a great enemy. Then let's see who lives and who dies. A cold light flashed in Lin Sun's black eyes. In the next moment, green wood and red fire Taoist bodies flew out together and headed in the same direction. Lin Sun's original body flew in another direction. Just 10 minutes later, a group of figures turned into divine rainbows and appeared at the place where Lin Sun originally stood. The one in the lead was Gu Banzwang. She glanced around with her beautiful eyes and suddenly frowned. The situation is not right. The aura of this kid has gone in 2 directions. It seems that he has already noticed that something is wrong. It's very likely that he has displayed a doppelganger. Can you determine which direction is the direction that his original body is fleeing to? Li Henshui's eyes flashed and asked quickly. If this kid is using a doppelganger, then the aura and the original body's aura are the same. It's impossible to determine the difference. Gu Banzwang was extremely confident in her tracking skills, but under such circumstances, she couldn't help but feel that it was a little tricky. Then let's act separately, Yun Luohong, who had always been silent, said. Perhaps this is what he wants to see. If we act separately, it's tantamount to being divided by him. Even if we catch up with his original body, the threat to him will be reduced by half. A haze appeared between Gu Banzwang's eyebrows. She had expected that Lin Sun would not be easy to deal with, but she didn't expect that just tracking and dealing with him would cause such a tricky situation. Library of Literature. Chapter 26-29. Gu Banzwang's words made the atmosphere a lot more gloomy. No one thought that Lin Sun was so cunning. But at the same time, after using a doppelganger, the power of his body will be weakened a lot, and it will be easier to kill him. Li Henshui pondered, let's do it this way. I will take people to act with Banzwang and others, and Brother Luohong will take people in another direction. Yun Luohong didn't express his opinion. But Gu Banzwang objected, it's better for me to act with Brother Luohong. You don't trust me? Li Henshui's face was a little gloomy. Gu Banzwang smiled sweetly and said in a gentle voice, I think Brother Henshui's strength is enough to deal with all kinds of situations. On the contrary, Brother Luohong and I can guarantee that nothing will go wrong. As she said, she threw a piece of black horn to Li Henshui and said, This is the life bone of a unicorn. With this treasure we can sense Lin Sun's breath. Li Henshui took it in his hand, played with it a little, and snorted coldly, Then let's have a try and see who can kill the little bastard's body. After saying that, he took people and whistled away. Brother Luohong, shall we also act? Gu Banzwang asked charmingly. Yun Luohong glanced at her and said, You really can't distinguish the breath of Lin Sun's body? Gu Banzwang smiled lightly. Although I can't distinguish it, I can roughly infer that the strength of Brother Henshui is enough to easily kill a doppelganger of Lin Sun, and we can act together and kill his body. In this way, the fortune of this boy will be obtained by us. Yun Luohong said expressionlessly, If you dare to plot against me, I will. Gu Banzwang hurriedly said, I promise that I will not dare to have any other ideas. Yun Luohong nodded, and without any more nonsense, he took the people of Yun clan and directly began to act. Gu Banzwang hurriedly took people to follow, but she laughed in her heart. She didn't tell Yun Luohong that the direction Li Henshui and others were chasing was the direction where Lin Sun's body was most likely to appear. The reason why she did this was very simple. Gu Banzwang was afraid. She had learned a lot about Lin Sun and his achievements, and had long regarded him as an extremely dangerous enemy. Originally, she did intend to unite all the forces to deal with Lin Sun. But when Gu Banzwang sensed Lin Sun's aura fleeing in 2 different directions, He realized that Lin Sun might have noticed their pursuit. Under such circumstances, it was undoubtedly the safest way to test the combat power of Lin Sun with the help of Li Henshui and others. In short, this was killing with a borrowed knife. As for Lin Sun's fortune, Gu Banzwang didn't care about it at all, because, even if they managed to obtain such good fortune, they would still have to hand it over to the Dongwang clan. The 4 clans of the Dongwang royal clan basically had no chance at all. As for whether she would be blamed by Li Henshui in the future, Gu Banzwang didn't care much about it. She had said at that time that it was impossible to judge which direction Lin Sun's real body fled to. Elder, could it be that you haven't noticed? Gu Banzwang obviously has other plans. As they pursued, a clansman of the Li clan couldn't help but warn them. However, Li Henshui laughed, his eyes flashing. No matter how scheming that bitch is, she definitely wouldn't dare to harm us in this matter. If I'm not wrong, what we're chasing this time is most likely a clone of Lin Sun. Elder, if that's the case, even if we kill Lin Sun's clone of the Great Path, we won't get anything. Wouldn't it be equivalent to wasting our efforts? The clansmen of the Li clan all revealed expressions of indignation. Don't worry, Lin Sun isn't that easy to deal with. In my opinion, Gu Banzwang and the others won't be able to kill Lin Sun in a short period of time. Li Henshui's expression revealed a hint of conceit. But we're different. After we kill Lin Sun's clone, we can go and meet up with Gu Banzwang and the others. If she really dares to take all the battle merits for herself, she'll have to see if our Li clan agrees to it. Everyone immediately relaxed. Buzz after the time it took for an incense stick to burn. The black beast horn in Li Henshui's hand suddenly produced a strange tremor. He immediately became spirited and waved his hand. Prepare for battle. Instantly, the group of people stopped in the void. This was a boundless mountain range. Immortal mist was like clouds, drifting between heaven and earth. As far as the eye could see, it was vast and empty. Relying on the senses of the black horn, Li Henshui immediately looked towards the depths of the mountain range. There was a low mountain there, bare and very inconspicuous, but as an emperor ancestor, Li Henshui sensed an almost imperceptible ripple of restrictive aura at that moment. It was very subtle, almost invisible. If it wasn't for the black beast horn's reminder, even Li Henshui couldn't help but doubt whether he could catch this trace of restriction fluctuation. Everyone be careful. Although this is Lin Sun's clone, it absolutely can't be underestimated. Don't fail miserably in an easy task. Li Henshui reminded them secretly. As he spoke, he silently removed the enormous axe that he carried on his back and held it in his hand while his vital energy circulated to its limit in secret. There were a total of 19 clansmen of the Li clan beside him. All of them were experienced in battle and had experienced blood. There was no need for him to remind them, they had already quietly circulated their qi. Let's go. Li Henshui took the lead and rushed towards the depths of the mountain range. Behind him, a group of clansmen followed closely. When they moved in the void, they were like a group of shadows, not making a single sound. But this scene was all seen by a pair of eyes. Thousands of miles away, in the depths of a large river, a formation plate appeared in Lin Sun's palm. The formation plate reflected a light screen, impressively reflecting the figures of Li Henshui and the others. It seems that I can harvest a batch first. Lin Sun's eyes were deep, and he quietly stood up from the bottom of the river. Originally, after being reminded by Tsang Fusheng and being aware of this killing disaster, he planned to take a roundabout battle. First, he used the method of the Great Path doppelganger and himself to act separately, so as to achieve the goal of dividing the opponent. In this way, he could greatly weaken the threat from the opponent. And at this moment, what he had set up was a trap. On the peak of the mountain, he had set up a restriction formation, and left a trace of his own will in the formation to attract the attention of the enemy. And he was lurking at the bottom of the river thousands of miles away, using the formation plate to communicate with the power of the formation, to observe the traces and number of the opponent. If the opponent's number was large, he would retreat at the first instance. If the opponent's formation was not much of a threat, then this trap would become a true killing disaster, giving the enemy a fatal blow. Obviously, in Lin Sun's view, although Li Henshui and the others were a threat, they were not very serious. So, he decided to pull in the net. Until they were thousands of feet away from the low mountain peak, Li Henshui and the others quietly stopped, fanning out and sealed off all directions. "When I give the order, attack this mountain with all your strength, do you hear me?" Li Henshui transmitted, a murderous spirit surging in his eyes. At this moment, he was actually a little nervous, a little excited, and a little expectant. Although the opponent was very likely only a Great Path doppelganger, but after all, it was one with Lin Sun, and this Lin Sun was a peerless and ruthless person, causing the Nan clan to suffer a great loss. The nearby clansmen of the Li clan nodded and gathered their strength as they waited. "Do it!" Taking a deep breath, Li Henshui suddenly waved the huge axe in his hand. Bang! An axe light that seemed to be on the verge of splitting the heavens flashed up, and it was over 3 kilometers long. It tore through the sky and carried the vast and powerful energy of azure lightning as it struck towards the low mountain peak. This axe hadn't even descended when the sounds of gods chanting scriptures and ghosts howling resounded out from space, and it was obvious how terrifying this strike was. At the same time, the other 10+ Li clan clansmen had already made a move in unison. Bang! This expanse of the heavens and the earth was in chaos, and it fell into a great torrent of destruction. Various blazing and resplendent Dao arts were mixed with the monstrous might of numerous emperor weapons, and it was like a heavenly river that had burst its banks as it charged out from all directions. When looked at from afar, this expanse of the heavens and the earth was illuminated. The might of such a full-force strike was utterly indescribable. The mountain instantly melted and transformed into boundless ash that dispersed into the surroundings, and everything in the world fell into destruction as if they'd been fiercely wiped out by the hand of the heavens. Bang! The rumbling that shook the heavens and the earth instantly resounded in the 9 heavens and swept towards the surroundings, and the torrent of energy that was like a landslide and a tsunami swept out, and it seemed as if it intended to flatten the boundless mountains and rivers. After a long time, the surging dust and dirt that covered the heavens and the earth gradually dispersed. Not to mention a clone, even a Dao ancestor would be instantly annihilated by such an attack. It's utterly impossible to resist. A wisp of an arc arose on the corners of Li Henshui's mouth. But in the next moment, this arc froze on the corners of his mouth. In his divine sense, the short mountain that was covered in the energy of restrictions had really been obliterated, and even a bottomless chasm had been blasted open on the ground. However, there wasn't a trace of Lin Sun's figure within it. Even if he'd died, there ought to be some traces left behind. Yet now, the expanse of the heavens and the earth that had been destroyed was completely empty. Elder, Lin Sun's Dao clone doesn't seem to be here at all. The other clansmen of the Li clan recovered from their shock, and their expressions changed indeterminately. But this black beast horn is clearly pointing towards this place. Li Henshui frowned as he flipped open his palm to reveal the black horn that Gu Banzwang gave him. Right at this instant, the black horn droned violently as if it had suffered an irritation. Subsequently, a shrill cry resounded. The figure of a clansman of the Li clan that stood nearby suddenly exploded, and his flesh and blood splattered as he perished in both body and soul. This was an extremely experienced 9th realm ancestor at the Perfection realm, and he was able to obtain 9 consecutive victories in the arena. From this, it could be seen how strong his cultivation was, and it was far from what an ordinary peak great emperor could compare to. However, he was caught off guard and died on the spot. This sudden scene caused Li Henshui and the others to feel a chill run down their spines, and their scalps almost exploded. All of them realized that the situation wasn't good. But before they could react, Another unexpected change occurred in the battlefield. P.S. There will be more updates at night. Chapter 2630. Li Hengxi. Zhu Xie was an 8th-level martial emperor. His cultivation was extremely profound, comparable to Nan Tianjing. His combat power was extremely strong. When he sensed that something was wrong, he activated his cultivation and instinctively activated all his cultivation to defend. However, right at this instant, a fist smashed down like a divine mountain descending from the heavens, and his cultivation and defensive treasures actually instantly shattered like paper. When Li Hengxi wanted to dodge, it was too late. He could only watch as the fist came crashing down. Bang! His head, neck, chest were all in a straight line, and they were crushed by this punch as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The terrifying force of the punch even evaporated the rain of blood that sprayed out. Li Qingbi. Like Li Hengxi, Zhu Xie was an Emperor Zhu Xie. However, her cultivation had reached the perfection of the 8th-level martial emperor realm. She was seen as a pearl of the Li clan. She was highly valued by the elders of the clan. They thought that with her cultivation, she had a high chance of becoming the Zhu Xie emperor ancestor. When the change happened, she instinctively dodged without hesitation based on her sense of danger. However, countless strands of dense sword qi suddenly surged into appearance from all directions, and they seemed to cover the heavens and the earth as they completely drowned her peerlessly graceful and slender figure. Boom! Amidst the thunderous roar of sword qi, Li Qingbi was sliced into pieces by the countless sword qi. As though she had suffered the cruelest death by 1,000 cuts in the world, not even her bones were left. Li Yutong. A 9th-level martial ancestor who was only one step away from mastering a complete Great Tao. He wore a mysterious emperor puppet. His defensive power was shocking. However, in an instant, he was smashed into pieces by a cauldron. The emperor puppet exploded, and even his soul dissipated at the same time. Other than that, there were 3 other Li clan members who died. They were either killed by the sword qi, smashed into pieces by the palm, or swept away by the fist force. All of this happened at almost the same time. It was too fast. Almost as soon as Li Hengshui and the others sensed that something was wrong, this sudden killing calamity erupted. It was terrifying to an unimaginable extent. Li Hengshui's reaction was not slow. However, he did not expect that such a monstrous killing calamity would suddenly erupt against a clone. All of a sudden, he was caught unprepared. Only then did he see clearly that the Great Path doppelganger that he had expected to belong to Lin Sun was not just one. There were 4 of them. Moreover, one of the sword cauldrons floating above his head was obviously not a doppelganger, but Lin himself. Damn it, I've been tricked! Li Henshui's face darkened and his eyes almost popped out. He let out a roar and rushed towards Lin Sun like a furious ancient beast. Boom! He brandished the giant axe in his hand, stirring up tens of thousands of Tao Radiance natural laws. It was as if the heavens were being split open. The terrifying Emperor ancestor might made this world tremble, the void rumble and collapse. Clang! Lin Sun resisted with abyssal sword cauldron, which made Li Henshui stagger. Li Henshui's face changed again. He finally understood why someone as powerful as Nan Yongqiang was killed by Lin Sun in the battle of defending the arena. This kid's combat strength has really reached a level where he can shake and suppress an imperial ancestor. It's too heaven-defying. Ah dash! No. At this instant 2 more screams resounded from afar. 2 more clansmen of the Li clan had been blasted to death, and they died on the battlefield. In fact, the battlefield was already in chaos at this moment. Those clansmen of the Li clan had suffered such a bloody and terrifying attack. Although they reacted extremely quickly, they could not withstand Lin Sun's violent suppression. It should be known that every doppelganger of his was reconstructed by the Great Path Furnace Scripture, and the power they possessed now was not inferior to that of his original body. At the beginning, when Lin Sun's original body and these doppelgangers attacked, he had already urged his combat strength to the extreme without holding back at all. How could that kind of power be ordinary? At this moment, only a moment had passed, 9 clansmen of the Li clan had died. And it should be known that there were originally 19 clansmen of the Li clan. In other words, in just a moment, nearly half of the Li clan had died. This bloody scene was like the haze of death covering the battlefield, and it was constantly reaping lives. It stimulated the remaining clansmen of the Li clan to roar repeatedly as if they had gone mad. The scene was extremely chaotic. Some tried to stay far away and escape from the situation of being ceaselessly suppressed, yet their attempts ended in failure repeatedly. Lin Sun's 3 doppelgangers were like a formation of 3. The might they emanated completely enveloped the clansmen of the Li clan, and it was utterly impossible for them to turn the situation around in a short period of time. Someone didn't hesitate to activate his trump card, causing a strand of terrifying will that belonged to an eternal figure to appear, and it pressed down upon this expanse of the heavens and the earth to the point of showing signs of collapse. However, before this will could exert its might, it was torn apart by a blade that was mottled with rust, and it transformed into a rain of light that covered the sky before shattering. This blade came from the Nan clan, and it was originally an eternal Dao weapon. Even though it was severely damaged, it could still be considered as a secret treasure with great lethality. However, at the same time, the blade collapsed along with it. In the end, it was a heavily damaged treasure, and the energy it contained was limited. A wisp of madness flashed in the eyes of Li Henshui, who was in battle with Lin Sun's original body when he witnessed this scene. Ha! Between Li Henshui's palms and fingers, an extremely dazzling golden light suddenly surged out. Upon a closer look, it was a wooden statue that was less than half a foot tall, and it sat upright on the auspicious cloud. The statue sat cross-legged with an ancient face that seemed to be smiling and crying, and its hands that were clasped at its abdomen formed a strange ancient seal. The endless dazzling golden light surged out from this statue, and it revealed a brilliant and boundless aura of immortality, causing this expanse of heaven and earth to be enveloped in a solemn and mysterious atmosphere. Lin Sun and his 3 doppelgangers who were in battle with the enemy all stiffened, and they felt a fatal danger. Undoubtedly, the statue that Li Henshui summoned at this moment was an extremely terrifying trump card, and it was filled with taboo power. At this moment, the clansmen of the Li clan all breathed a sigh of relief at the same time, and their eyes glowed with a trace of fanaticism, as if they had absolute confidence in the statue. As Li Henshui recited a strange and obscure incantation, his strength was actually madly absorbed by the statue in his hand. The blazing light of immortality that emerged around the statue became more and more brilliant, and the aura it released became more and more terrible. It was faintly visible that the closed eyes of the statue seemed to be about to open. Boom! Without any delay, Lin Sun activated the abyssal sword cauldron, trying to stop all this. But with a deafening roar, the abyssal sword cauldron was shaken back by the golden light of immortality released by the statue, and could not get close to it at all. Little bastard, you can die in peace under the immortal golden body left by the ancestor of our clan. Li Henshui looked crazy. His aura surged, and all his strength was absorbed by the statue called Immortal Golden Body, like a great river. Lin Sun waved his hand and threw out a jade talisman. In an instant, a phantom of a spear surrounded by immortality roared out. What was imprinted in it was the aura of the myriad transformation spear. Like the previous rusty blade, this was also a trump card of the Nan clan, and it was displayed by Lin Sun at this time. However, with a rumble, the phantom of the spear was blocked by the blazing golden light, and then it exploded inch by inch and dissipated into thin air. Lin Sun's pupil shrank. This attack, which was a serious threat to the ancestor of the emperor, was still unable to shake the statue of the immortal golden body. Ha ha ha, it's useless. No matter how much you struggle, it's futile. Li Henshui laughed wildly. The other clansmen of the Li clan sneered as well. This statue was actually the remains of an immortal realm ancestor of their clan. It was said to be indestructible and possessed unbelievably terrifying power. Ordinary trump cards could not shake it at all. Boom! Suddenly, the statue seemed to have accumulated enough power, and it suddenly released a golden light of immortality that shot into the sky, sweeping through the heavens and the earth. The closed eyes of the statue trembled slightly, and then it slowly opened. An indescribably terrifying power spread out, oppressing the sky to the point that it trembled, and everything showed signs of collapse. The scene caused all the clansmen of the Li clan to tremble, and their minds surged. It was as if they were witnessing the awakening of their ancestor after countless years, and he had returned to the world. At this moment, Lin Sun suddenly smiled and said, "This treasure belongs to me, Lin Sun, from today onwards." His voice was still drifting through the air. At this moment, time seemed to have frozen, and the heavens and the earth fell into a momentary silence. This was naturally the forbidden divine ability. At this moment, Lin Sun appeared in front of Li Henshui and slapped his palm down. Bang! Li Henshui, whose strength had already been absorbed by the statue, was smashed into pieces like a piece of paper. At the same time, the abyssal sword cauldron descended, suppressing the divine statue within it. Its half-opened eyes were once again shut at this moment. Everything happened in an instant. When the clansmen of the Li clan reacted, they saw the scene of Li Henshui's body exploding into pieces, and they saw the scene of the statue being taken by Lin Sun with the abyssal sword cauldron. "No!" All of them cried out involuntarily as if they were struck by lightning. Their expressions changed wildly, as if they were grieving for the death of their parents, and they were about to go crazy. This change was too great, and it was like a dream. In the blink of an eye, everything had been reversed. The scene of the immortal golden body easily killing Lin Sun was also destroyed, and it would never happen again. At the same time, Lin Sun felt completely relieved, and his body was completely relaxed. The aura released by the statue was like a sharp blade against his throat, and he felt a fatal threat. There was no doubt that if the statue's power was completely released, it could easily kill Lin Sun in an instant. Fortunately, all of this was stopped by the forbidden divine ability, and it didn't really happen. There was no delay. Lin Sun activated the abyssal sword cauldron and attacked the clansmen of the Li clan. But the three doppelgangers were faster than him. While the clansmen of the Li clan were shocked, they seized the opportunity to attack with all their strength. This time, Lin Sun didn't intend to let any of the clansmen of the Li clan go. P.S. Here's a patch.